Wauwatosa School Board to order. It's 7:01 p.m. on Monday, December 10th. We're in the administration building, the boardroom level. We'll begin with a moment of silent reflection. Mrs. Galante, please will you call the roll?
Mrs. Fee?
Here.
Mr. DeRose?
Here.
Mr. Croner?
Here.
Mrs. Muehlfeld?
Here.
Mrs. Randall?
Here.
Mrs. Weber?
Here.
Mr. Meyer?
Here. Members of the Wauwatosa School Board value the input of students, parents, staff members, and community members. The Board's regularly scheduled meetings provide an opportunity for opinions and concerns to be expressed publicly. The Board values all comments and will respectfully consider this input in decision-making. The Board requests that individuals limit their comment on each item to 3 minutes. Following any comment, an individual board member may respond on the issue raised. However, it is not the intent of the public comment portion of the agenda for the Board to enter into a debate with members of the community. Because non-agenda items are not publicly posted in advance, no action will be taken on public comment regarding non-agenda items this evening. Is there anyone present who would like to comment on a non-agenda item? Seeing no one, we will move on to the approval of the consent agenda. Are there any items on the consent agenda which board members would like to remove for separate discussion or action? Mr. Croner, yes?
Mr. Maher, I'd like to take up the technology recommendations separately.
For separate discussion and action?
Yes, please.
Okay. All right. May I have, yes, is there any comment on the consent agenda in general?
Had a motion yet.
This is true. Thank you. May we have a motion on the consent agenda?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Croner. Is there a second?
Is this a second to approve it minus the one?
We'll move to discuss the consent agenda.
Okay, second.
And then, okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm. Second.
All right, thank you. So we have a motion and a second on the consent agenda. We have a request to separate out the technology section. Can we let's first take discussion and vote on everything excepting the non-technology section of the agenda. Is there any discussion on anything in the consent agenda excepting the non-technology section, including the check register, which is here for examination? Seeing no comment. Mrs. Galante, please will you, wait, before we get there, let's see exactly what the words are. Okay, it's labeled technology. We're going to vote on everything except the section that has the heading that says technology in the consent agenda. Mrs. Galante, please call the roll.
Mrs. Fee?
Yes.
Mr. DeRose?
Yes.
Mr. Croner?
Yes.
Mrs. Muehlfeld?
Yes.
Mrs. Randall?
Yes.
Mrs. Weber?
Yes.
Mr. Meyer?
Yes. Okay, passes. So now we'll move to the technology section of the consent agenda discussed and voted on separately. Mr. Croner, do you have some?
Yes, I do. Thank you. I asked this to be as a separate item, not because I'm opposed to it, but because I think when we have items that are several $100,000 like this one is and kind of moving in a slightly new direction for the district, I think they should be voted on in a more slightly open process. And so there are two items here, one for a little over $41,000 for some laptop carts, and then $192,000 for 840 Chromebooks, which are our small notebooks, which will be used in the classrooms. I was hoping we could get just a brief description of how those are going to be used in the schools.
The Chromebooks in particular are for upper elementary and middle school and high school level. As we continue to move more toward the wireless infrastructure being in place by the end of February throughout the district and increasing access for students and moving more toward the cloud, we currently have Chromebooks in the 4 secondary schools and some at the elementary level that are being utilized. 4 secondary principals felt strongly that Chromebooks were a much better way to go for technology versus iPads. But the idea of moving more toward students having their own technology, being able to supplement with Chromebooks as well at the secondary level. The concept of computer labs being more or less phased out and not having computer labs and the use of computers as being an activity of going to the computer lab rather than bringing the technology to the students so they have access to it in their seats. And the idea of getting to the point where all students have access to technology in their seats and to be able to use technology, not something that they waste time going to and getting to. And Chromebooks, with the cost currently at $229 per unit, which includes the service plan for them. And the carts are actually what's going to store the Chromebooks, so they are mobile around the schools.
Good, thank you.
Is there any other comment or question from the board? Yes, Mrs. Randall.
Quick clarification. The reason it's on the consent agenda is that it's already been approved in the budget. This is not approving the expenditure, it's approving the bidder.
Right, and the purchase of it.
Yeah, so it isn't really anything new.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any other board question or comment? Mrs. Weber, please.
Yes, I do support Mr. Kroner's comments. I think that it's valuable that we have this discussion, not only for ourselves, but the public that are not here that do question these. So I appreciate that when we do have that additional conversation and support of the items listed.
Any other board question or comment? I have one comment just to emphasize that we're trying to, Dr. Ertl is trying to operate on a goals-oriented basis, and the goals, of course, fundamentally are to improve student learning, and the strategy, one of the components of the strategy is to bring more content to the student's desk to more effectively deliver the content and provide more efficient use of teacher time. On the road to that, we put in the fiber optic infrastructure. A few meetings ago, we had a vote on wireless capability that was connected into the fiber optics, and this is one more step in that process to bring the content to the student at the student's desk to try to improve our learning outcomes. So with that, is there any community comment? Seeing none. Mrs. Galante, please will you call the roll?
Mrs. Fee?
Yes.
Mr. Giroux?
Yes.
Mr. Kroner?
Yes.
Mrs. Muehlfeld?
Yes.
Mrs. Randall?
Yes.
Mrs. Weber?
Yes.
Mr. Meyer?
Yes. Now we will move to the recognitions portion of our agenda. Mr. Kroner, please.
Thank you, Mr. Meyer. 114 students from Wauwatosa East High School became new members of the National Honor Society during ceremonies held on November 14, 2012. Inductees heard from Ellen Pickering, Chapter President, Anna Brown, Vice President, Christine Ench, Activities Director, and Zoe Stefaniak, Secretary. 52 students from Wauwatosa West High School were inducted during ceremonies on November 15, 2012. Annalise Albers, NHS President, and Aaron Stapleton, NHS Vice President, spoke. The National Honor Society and the National Junior Honor Society are the nation's premier organizations established to recognize outstanding high school and middle-level students. More than just an honor roll, the National Honor Society serves to honor those students who have demonstrated excellence in the areas of scholarship, leadership, service, and character.
2 teachers from Wauwatosa East High School, Judy Patrick, Science, and Sue Bowles, Special Education, have received National Board Certification. National Board Certification is part of the growing education reform movement that is advancing student learning, improving teaching, and making schools better. Teachers who achieve National Board Certification have met high standards through study, expert evaluation, self-assessment, and peer review.
2 teachers from the Wauwatosa School District have been nominated in 2 of the 2013 Herb Cole Educational Foundation Fellowships categories. Teachers are nominated in 1 of 4 categories: elementary, middle/junior high, High School and Special Services. Andrew Pinn, a second-grade teacher at Washington Elementary, was nominated in the elementary category. Chad Mateski, a social studies teacher at West High School, was nominated in the high school category. Herb Cole Educational Foundation Fellowship recipients are chosen for their ability to inspire a love of learning in their students, their ability to motivate others, and for their leadership and service within and outside the classroom. Teachers are nominated by students, parents, other teachers, community members, and administrators. Winners will be announced in spring 2013 by the Herb Cole Educational Foundation, and fellowship winners and their schools are each awarded $1,000 grants. 36 Wauwatosa School District educators have been named Herb Cole Educational Foundation Fellowship winners since the program started in 1990. Since 1990, the Herb Cole Educational Foundation has awarded a total of $7.8 million to Wisconsin educators, students, and schools.
Well, thank you very much. Next, yes, Mrs.
May I make a comment,
Oh, of
please?
course, yes.
Perhaps I'm a little biased, but I'm not going to apologize for that. I believe we have an excellent or outstanding school district. And when we read to see how many young people are a National Honor Society each year, then we see the teachers of excellence that have gone for the National Board Certification and then Cole Fellowship. This is what makes our district, I think, exceptional, and I'm grateful for each and every one of the classroom teachers and administrators that we have.
Thank you for that comment. Next, we'll move to our action items. Human Resources. Mrs. Muehlfeld, please.
Thank you. It is recommended that the school board approve the administrative contract for Wauwatosa West High School Associate Principal Clint Grachowski, effective December 14th, 2012, for 221 contract days at a salary of $78,000, prorated to days worked, and I so move.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Randall. Dr. Ertl, would you like to introduce them?
Yes, thank you. Clint is here this evening. Clint is coming from New Berlin, where he has most recently been teaching Spanish. He's gone through, I feel, a pretty rigorous interview process. I know I've met with him on 2 formal occasions, and then I got to meet his wife and 2 girls running around at the basketball game on Friday evening at West. So Clint is here to welcome.
Hi, Clint Grachowski. I just wanted to come and thank you personally for the opportunity. I cannot tell you how excited I am to be joining your community and your schools. I've been teaching, Dr. Earl said, for 13 years, and for the most part it's been very rewarding and challenging every day, but I'm ready for a new challenge and really looking forward to work with all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm seeing you're wearing green.
Somebody told me I was at Tosa West.
Very appropriate, yes, for Wauwatosa West. Well, thank you. Is there any board comment or question? Is there any community comment or question? Well, okay. Well, let's take the roll, please, Mrs. Galante.
Mrs. Fee?
Yes.
Mr. DeRose?
Yes.
Mr. Croner?
Yes.
Mrs. Muehlfeld?
Yes.
Mrs. Randall?
Yes.
Mrs. Weber?
Yes.
Mr. Meyer?
Yes. And Clint, welcome to our school district.
Thank you.
Next is our student learning portion of the agenda. Mr. Jarosz, please.
It is recommended that the school board approve the contract between the Wauwatosa Virtual Academy Charter School and the Wauwatosa School Board, and I so move.
Second.
Mrs. Weber, thank you for the second. Is there any board comment or question?
Are we having
Oh,
a
I'm sorry.
presentation?
The presentation, of course. Mr. Croner, I knew you were very well prepared, so I was just thinking about that. And would you like to begin with your presentation?
Yeah, we're not going to have a formal presentation on the proposal. I think information was presented at a previous meeting, but ultimately we do have Dennis Mahoney is here this evening, and Gary McCrary from Advanced Academics, which is the the company we are going to be associating with for the virtual school efforts. What we're proposing is a charter school for virtual school students, for students taking classes virtually. Currently, we have students and have had students for the past 5 years take classes, online courses, and this is an extension of that, as well as looking at a program that would be open to students across the state of Wisconsin through open enrollment. We negotiated an agreement with Advanced Academics that is financially obviously good for them, or they wouldn't be in it, but also, and most importantly, good for us as a school district. There's a couple of reasons we're doing it. One is to provide opportunities for our students. We continue to lose students that open enroll out to virtual schools in grades 6 through 12, to other virtual schools throughout the state, and we feel this is a much better option. Not only will they stay within our school district and receive a Wauwatosa diploma, but financially also it's in the best interest of the district. But we feel it's also most important because of what Advanced Academics offers through their online course offerings. Also, the expansion of moving to a statewide program, like I mentioned, the financial aspects of bringing in students through open enrollment for the virtual school is beneficial for our district, and above and beyond the dollars that we currently are expending for online courses for our students, the money that we receive will help to offset further courses that we plan to offer. We continue to move in the direction where more students have opportunities to take online courses, and I think even as we move into a new schedule in 2 years, my goal would be that we have online courses offered in the course catalog so students can choose it, and it's not just kind of a sidelight. So that process is yet to be developed, but we continue to have more students with more needs and parents that want those options. And Mr. Mahoney has worked with many students and families in those courses as well. So tonight we do have Dennis and Gary here to answer any questions that the board may have.
Okay, so that is the presentation?
Correct.
More or less? Mr. Croner, do you have, I know Mr. Croner has questions because he does a lot of research on these things. Is there, do you have any unanswered questions so far or something you wish to highlight for the board about
I do have questions.
research? Thank you. We want to go ahead?
And so I'll ask a few and then
Okay.
pause and see what other people would like to say. I understand the motives behind the school, and I think they're earnest and well thought out. I think from a procedural point of view, I'm troubled by the way that it's been put together so quickly. We actually have not been given a proposal for this school as one of our policies requires. In fact, there is a sentence in the contract that says, whereas the governance board has prepared and submitted and the district has received and favorably reviewed a charter school proposal for a charter school to be located in Wauwatosa, Wisconsin, and to be called the Wauwatosa Virtual Academy. When I asked if we'd actually received a proposal, the response was to take that out of the contract. So I guess my request is to not, I guess, do what I call as governed by crises. And to me, this is kind of a manufactured crisis where this is now presented to us at one meeting. We have to vote on it in order to open the school next year, and so our backs are kind of against the wall. So I guess from a procedural point of view, I wish we would, since we've been talking about this for probably a year or more, kind of unofficially, if we had just taken it a little slower and had some more public meetings to talk about it. I do have some questions about the school. And since the representatives from Advanced Academics is here, I just really have one question for you. I noticed from looking at there's a report that this legislature in Wisconsin did where they analyzed virtual schools in the state. And there's kind of a mix of virtual schools that employ their own teachers versus contract out. And I've learned that you'll be hiring the teachers that teach the courses for our school. How would you go about doing that and ensuring that they're high-quality teachers?
All the teachers that are employed by Advanced Academics go through exactly the same certification and qualification review process as any other teacher here in the state of Wisconsin. I mean, they have to go through and be board certified and highly qualified certifications in their area of expertise. In addition to that, the state of Wisconsin also requires incremental training that goes above and beyond what a traditional classroom teacher goes through. They have to go through an extra 30 hours of online training to make them certified to teach virtually within the state of Wisconsin. So all of our teachers are highly qualified Wisconsin certified teachers.
So just because I don't know how this works, generally do they reside in Wisconsin or out of state or both?
Initially, they will reside in out of state. They are based in our corporate offices. We have a philosophy of team teaching. As programs grow, we will put offices of teachers within the different states as the enrollment increases that time.
Okay. And I will say, I know that when you were here last, I was a bit tough on you with some hard questions. And during this past year, I know many students have taken online courses, and I've heard nothing but good things about it. So I just wanted to say that.
Appreciate it. You asked good questions and well thought out, so I have no concerns with those.
Okay. A general question I have is, I know from when I've looked into it, it's not just for you now, but there's an open enrollment cap for virtual schools in Wisconsin. I think 5,200 students or something. How is that going to play in? How many of those seats are already taken up as of this year, and how is that going to play into the growth of our school?
The cap has been removed as of last year. The legislation, they removed the cap, so there is no cap on open enrollment for virtual schools.
Okay, good. I do have some questions about the contract that weren't clear. There's a continuing confusion with me is what's the difference between the current online program that we're running where students have the option to take online courses and we've been paying for them versus the virtual charter school. And because it's not clear to me whether resident students can apply and be accepted to the virtual charter school or not.
Students will either, there's two courses I guess I would look at it. One is you're a student of the virtual charter school and that you're full-time in the virtual charter school. The other one is where our regular brick and mortar students take online courses. The brick and mortar students don't necessarily have to take advanced academic courses. We still have the opportunity that whether we get courses from Florida Virtual, wherever it would be, whatever fits the student's needs the best. But currently we have students that take those courses, but they would not be full-time enrolled students in the charter school. So either if you're going to enroll in it, they're going to make that full-time commitment, they're going to be a full-time student in that school, or they're going to be a brick and mortar student that would have access to online courses. Currently, similar to what we do now. So basically what we're adding is a full-time option for students that would enroll in the charter school.
So are they then physically, in a sense, two separate programs?
Yes.
So the students that are taking part-time courses aren't members of the charter school?
Correct.
Okay. So when the enrollment opens up for the virtual charter school, are Wauwatosa residents eligible to apply?
Yes.
And is there an unlimited number of seats for them? I mean, can they fill the whole school if that so happened to turn out that way, or half the school?
If 500 students elect to do it, I think there's a process. And Gary can, I know they have a lengthy process and an onboarding process, and part of it is educating students into what they're going to be involved in when they're in virtual schools. My personal feeling is taking 4 years of high school, for example, strictly online, I don't think is the best thing for students. But I'm not the one making those choices. For various reasons, parents and students feel, and they've proven it is the most successful for them. So I think our counselors have a job. I know Amy Harrington has worked extensively and will continue to work with us on this in talking with parents and students about what online learning is and what it isn't, what kind of commitment it takes, how it is different. And I think there's an education process to making sure students make good decisions and parents make good decisions about what it is. So in a long-winded answer, yes, we could have 500 students that elect to take the online courses. I just don't see that as something that will happen.
So, and if a resident student is in the online charter school, we still receive this full amount that we would normally receive from them if they were not in the school?
Correct.
Okay. So, the reason that's confusing to me, and I've talked to Mr. Mahoney about this, and we agreed we need to talk about it tonight, is that there's a statement in the contract under item 10 that says requirements for admission to the school are, and there's a list of requirements. But the fourth one says all resident and current non-resident students that apply to the WVA by February 6, 2013 will be accepted. And that implies to me that if 30 Wauwatosa students apply and 80 out-state students apply, that all 30 Wauwatosa students are guaranteed admittance if they apply by February 6th. Is that what that says?
Correct.
Okay, so that to me is a bit of a problem in a sense, because I understand the educational aspects of this, but one of the main reasons that was put forward for doing this was a financial reason. And for every student that we put in there from Wauwatosa, we're losing $6,400 that we would have received from the open enrollment and application. And it won't take very many Wauwatosa students before we're actually losing money on this school. So I don't see how it's going to work financially if we have a very heavy resident enrollment in there.
I don't think we're going to have a problem accommodating all, in my opinion, all non-resident applications for open enrollment in the first year. We're capping it at 500. If we get more than 500 applications and we can manage more than 500, we'll come back to the board and ask for more open seats. I think it's not, I want to clarify, it's not just for financial reasons the reason we're doing this. It is educational. Like I said, we have parents and we have students that are electing this option and electing to walk out our doors. And there's some that I think would prefer to stay in Wauwatosa and have those classes here. So the driver for this is the fact that each year we have students electing to leave.
So in the budget you gave us, you listed for fiscal year 2013-14, you have 100 students in parentheses, and then 250 students for 14-15 and 500 for 15-16. Are you saying now that you will be accepting up to 500 for the first year?
We could. The budget is planned on what, I mean, it's hard to guess. This is the second year with uncapped virtual school open enrollment. I don't know that we have any way to gauge the number of applications we get. I think it's going to depend upon marketing. It's going to depend upon how many families are out there that really want to go into virtual education. So the budget is what we think could happen in the first, second, and third years. But I think when you put the case forward that we're not going to be able to accommodate in the first year, my point is that we can. We can accommodate, I believe, all open enrollment applications in the first year.
But the financial aspect, financially negative aspect of having TOSA students is still there. If there are 150 students in a school, you have 50 Wauwatosa students, you're still only getting the income from 100 open enrollment students, but you have the cost of running the school for 150 students. So I think that profit projections are optimistic, overly optimistic.
No, not if they're electing, if those families are staying here instead of electing to go open enrollment. I think that's exactly what we're trying to do, and we're not losing students and paying out $6,000 to another virtual school.
So, Dr. Ertl, if I may insert a question into this exchange, is there an assumption that Wauwatosa residents who applied to the full charter school are students we might have lost anyway?
Correct.
Okay.
I think it's similar to the Montessori when we started the Montessori program. We looked at the students that might have gone elsewhere for their Montessori education.
Now, of course, with all assumptions, they could be correct or they could be incorrect.
Correct.
But there's lots of assumptions, and that is one of them. Okay, I'm sorry, Mr. Carter. Go ahead.
Well, I guess, can I ask something too on that particular
let's
point?
see if.
I will pause at this point.
Okay.
For
Yes,
questions.
Mrs. Randall.
Okay, so we get state funding of $6,400 per student, correct?
No, we get, Mr. Mack, how much do we get per student? 10,500, 11,000 per student.
Okay, in our district, and $6,400 if they're in the virtual charter school.
For open enrollment is the
For
rough
open enrollment.
hour.
Okay. All right, that's all I wanted to clarify.
Is this on the same discussion line,
No.
Mrs.?
No,
You,
it's-
will you
I
wanted
will-
to yield?
I will pause for other people.
Okay. Mrs. Mufeld, please.
Thank you. So then a student could apply and attend WVA, and because it meets all of our credit requirements, perhaps year 1 or year 2 or year 3 or whenever they're attending doesn't work for them, can they come back? They're a resident, and they come back into the brick and mortar school,
Yes,
and all of their credits will transfer.
yes.
Mrs. Mufeld, are you
Yes, that
finished?
was my only question at this point.
Mr. Croder, do you have more questions?
I do, actually.
Go ahead, please, then.
I'm not sure what page it is on the contract that we received again this afternoon, but on section 4 at the bottom of the page, it says, our plan is to create a physical location that will support collaborative learning. Do you know yet what the expected costs for creating a new location that would support the school would be? Or what did you have in mind when you wrote that?
I don't anticipate any additional costs. We have space in the Fisher Building that would accommodate what we're looking at this point. If we look for something beyond that, that's a discussion we would have in the future with advanced academics, and we'd bring something forward if there was a cost point that was higher, then we'd bring it back to the board.
So many virtual schools I've learned operate, they open up computer labs for the students to work in the district, so we won't be opening something like that. The students would need to work just on their home and personal computers.
Correct.
To do that. Okay. One other question I have is some districts offer internet support, or they help students by pay for internet costs, and or they provide computers so that the people, I guess I would think, that attend the schools aren't limited by their financial means. Will we be doing that as well?
We do not plan on offering that support.
Okay. I mean, I find that a little bit troubling because I would hate to have a school open only, a public school open only to the people that can afford to be part of it. I mean, think if we're going to do something like this, if someone from out state applies and they can't afford a computer, that's the reason they can't go to the school. I think that's something that we need to reconsider. In the original budget for this year, there was a 1/3 time teacher for $25,500, which is clearly described. But under the section of funding the WVA, number 2, it says, additionally, the school district will fund the hiring of an additional WVA teacher from its annual operating budget. Is that in addition to the 1/3 time, or does that mean the same thing?
Phil, the way that I understand it is that what we have on this budget right here is what we're asking for in the budget itself. That's what we're saying, that if we have 100 students, those are the amounts for the teacher, the administrator, and the administrative assistant, and guidance counselor. And broke that down based on number and population, so I don't know where the conflict comes in.
So this is the budget that's supposed to be attached to the contract, according to our policy?
Actually, I saw this as a breakdown. One of the questions I think Mike gave us early on, if I can just backpedal for a second so we can kind of see this. One of the questions that he asked, he said the contract had some terms that would be more favorable, and asked us to discuss that. And so what I had said was that the budget would be of help in doing that. And so the budget reflects our agreements with advanced academics. There was a 60-40, I believe, split in the revenue, and this budget reflects that. And at the bottom of it, it reflects, all of the revenue and the net revenue of Wauwatosa. That's all the costs that I know at this point as far as anticipated. If there's more than that, I'm not aware of it.
So this statement that the district will fund the hiring of an additional teacher, we don't know whether that's an additional teacher or not?
No, it's
either a third, 2/3,
Right.
depending upon the enrollment. So that reflects that budget.
Right.
It'll still be a teacher, but they may not be full-time.
Not to exceed a full-time.
Okay.
If
I
the
get it.
maximum is 500, that's the cap that we're putting on. If that's the cap, that's when it hits the full-time status, and that's how we were doing it. So that wording might be my fault because I'm referring to a teacher broken down this way.
So the budget then is the more accurate representation of the
This
FTEs
is-
that you would be hiring
is
for
the
the
whole
school.
deal right here.
Okay. The reason I ask is that if you were to hire an additional teacher,
Right.
that would be all the profit of the school. So, okay. I think those are all my questions for now.
All right, thank you. Is there any other board question or comment? Is there any community question or comment? Seeing none.
Mr. Meyer?
Oh,
If
yes.
there were going to be no more questions, I'd like to make a final comment, if I can.
Sure, go ahead.
This is an interesting proposal, and I would like to support it, but I'm just not going to at this time. And there are three main reasons. Is that we have a specific policy that describes how these schools are supposed to be approved, and we haven't really followed that policy, and I think the board should hold itself to high standards as far as following policy. I think the costing is a little bit optimistic according to what I've seen in a legislative report for other virtual schools, and I think the profit that we may get is going to be very, very thin, and unless if we have too many resident students in there, we could be losing money on this school. That would be the second reason. And the third reason, I think, is more educational. And I'm in favor of technology in schools. I don't think technology makes kids learn, but in the hands of the right people can surely improve learning. And so I've supported technology in our schools. But in this particular case, I think the virtual school dilutes our focus in our own district. This will sound a little bit callous, but I don't feel an obligation to educate students in Baraboo or Whitewater or Green Bay. I think we got to focus on our own school district. With the new state standards that we adopted, probably the number of students that are minimal or basic in reading and math in our district probably doubled if we're going to follow the new standards. And I think that by constantly going out in all these new directions and not focusing on basic reading, basic math instruction, I think we're not providing the best possible education we can for our own students. Just the other day, we helped sponsor a small talk to a group of people about diversity that Dr. Damon Means gave us, and he felt the way to bridge the achievement gap was to just focus on reading, make sure every child could read at grade level. And I'd rather that we spend our time and effort doing things like that than opening a new virtual charter school. Having said that, I know the intentions are there. I know that the students that are in the school will probably do very well. But for me, I just think I'd rather put the district's emphasis in other places.
Right.
Yes, Mrs. Randall.
Well, I would much prefer to call the question. I can't just sit here and have it sound like we are giving up on everything else we do in our district when we do this. That's ridiculous. First of all, we had, I'm sorry I can't find it here, but we had an outstanding presentation from Mr. Mahoney last month on how we are currently serving students in our district through the virtual school and how we can enhance that for our current students. And I know that Mr. Mack played an integral part in making sure that this, like you always do, that this is a financially sound decision. You don't get on board if it's not. We know that. But primarily, what we have accomplished over the last year or two in every area in this district has been amazing. It's been amazing. And so, Mr. Croner, we always disagree on this. And sometimes I think we're not at the same meeting because we've talked about this. We've talked about the educational value. We've talked about the money. We have talked about where we're going. None of this is a surprise, and none of this is an either or. And I guess I'll leave it at that. That's my primary statement. For anybody to walk away here tonight and think that if we enhance our learning opportunities for our kids and other kids to make it financially viable, That's just utter nonsense. So
Is that all, Mrs. Randall?
that's it.
All right. Is there any other board comment or question?
Mr. Meyer, I have a question.
Oh, yes, Mrs. Mufo.
Thank you. There was a short discussion regarding the contract in the second paragraph about the governance board preparing and submitting this charter school proposal. Is that a true statement?
That is removed. It's redlined and it's removed.
Okay, so that's removed. So I just wanted to clarify that. Although I agree with some of Mr. Croner's points earlier about process, I am very versed in what the school will offer to students, and I do support it. As with all new undertakings on behalf of our students, we are sometimes nervous, for lack of a better word. But if we don't attempt it and try to reach those students, then how will we move forward? So I am looking for transformative type proposals, which I see you bringing forward here today, and I appreciate all of the work that you have put into it. And so I am in favor of the proposal.
Mrs. Weber, please.
I'm going to repeat myself that I put forth in the past. My goal, serving on the Wauwatosa School Board, is to promote successful education for each and every child in our district. There are young people that do struggle, and I don't know the reasons, but I am concerned that we give them an opportunity to become successful. If we can do it in a broader sense, greater opportunity for the young people of this country. I am strongly in support of this virtual school. With all respect, please, to Mr. Croner for the questions you've asked. Those are important. But I believe so in the virtual schools. I think this is a wonderful opportunity for our community.
Thank you, Mrs. Weber. Is there any other board comment? Okay, before we call the roll, I have a comment, or comments. I believe this proposal was carefully considered, well considered by administration. Administration brings considerable expertise in these matters to these discussions. Dr. Ertl has been, in fact, a national leader. Since before we hired him in this district, he was a national leader in online schools, and that was one of the reasons why he was hired. I believe that this online learning capability is something where when a school district has this expertise and these capabilities, that the students, all the students in that school district will be better off. And that we are entering into a world where school districts, those school districts who start this journey will be better off for their students than those school districts who do not start this journey. All programs start somewhere, and I'm particularly proud of where this program is starting. So, thank you. And with that, Mrs. Galante, please will you call the roll?
Mrs. Fee?
Yes.
Mr. DeRose?
Yes.
Mr. Croner?
No.
Mrs. Muehlfeld?
Yes.
Mrs. Randall?
Yes.
Mrs. Weber?
Yes.
Mr. Meyer?
Yes. Motion passes. Next item of business is our reports. We have business services report, the 2011 to 12 financial audit report. Judy Bruni is here from Feld, Schumacher and Company, and John Mack, our Director of Business Services, is coming to the front with her.
Good evening. I'm going to go through the 3-page summary that I handed out right before the meeting. Again, this year, the audit report contains an unqualified or clean opinion on the financial statements, meaning that the statements fairly present the financial position and results of the year's operations. Our two single audit reports, one on internal control and compliance over financial reporting, and one on internal control and compliance over federal and state grants, both were unqualified this year. There were no findings. We issued our usual audit letter to the board, which addresses our responsibility as auditors and what you can expect from an audit. It also states we had no disagreements with management and we had no difficulties in performing this year's audit. On the next page is a comparison of the two balance sheets, the accrual basis statement of net assets and the fund basis governmental funds balance sheets. At the end of the year, total assets for the district was $73.1 million compared to $68.8 million the year before, an increase of $4.5 million. Total liabilities, $20.3 million at the end of this year compared to $15.9 million last year. Included in the liabilities is the OPEB liability and the pension liability totaling $10.7 million. Net assets or equity on the accrual basis was $52.75 at the end of the year. That's slightly down from last year by $154,000. On the governmental funds balance sheets, $42.3 million in total assets at the end of the year. That's an increase of $4.5 million over the prior year. Current liabilities increased from $7.4 million to $9.3 million, and total fund balance for all funds went from $30.36 million to $33 million. That's an increase of $2,684,000. At the top of the next page is a comparison of the two income statements. On the accrual basis, the district shows a small deficit of $154,000, and on the fund basis, a surplus of $2,684,000. Under budget highlights for the general fund, the district budgeted a deficit of $2,285,000. We actually had a surplus of $2,243,000, so favorable by $4.5 million. There are two fiduciary funds which show the student activity agency funds, which had cash on hand at the end of the year of $423,000, all of which is due to the student organizations, and a small private purpose trust for scholarships, which had $316,000 in cash at the end of the year. Are there any questions?
Mrs. Randall, please.
The OPEB liability, was there a difference in reporting in the last year or two, Mr. Mack, in the requirements for how it was reported?
There's been no change.
Okay. Okay.
Is there any other board question or comment? I have one question. Can you please, or will you please, describe the difference between the internal control review you did, or your consideration of internal control over financial reporting, as compared to what you say you did not do, which was expressing an opinion on the effectiveness of the district's internal control over financial reporting? What's the difference, and what did you do and what did you not do?
Well, there's nothing we didn't do. We did everything that's always required for the audit. I'm not sure I understand.
Oh, that I understand. I know you did everything you're required to doing for the audit, but I'm looking at page 56. Under the section Internal Control over Financial Reporting. And it says, in planning and performing our audit, we considered the district's internal control over financial reporting as a basis for designing our auditing procedures for the purpose of expressing our opinion on the financial statements. fine, but not for the purpose of expressing an opinion on the effectiveness of the district's internal control over financial reporting. So, to the layperson, what does that mean? What are you not expressing an opinion on?
We're not expressing an opinion on your internal control. We are doing work on internal control as part of planning the audit. It's required that we do that. So we actually look at it quite extensively,
Okay.
but not enough to express an opinion.
So, let me see if I'm interpreting this correctly. In order to decide how to do your audit, you have to assess in some fashion risk.
Yes, exactly.
And in order to assess risk to the accuracy of the numbers that are presenting to you, you have to have some understanding of the internal control practices, because that affects the risk that the numbers aren't what they present themselves as being. Is
Correct. We obtain the understanding of internal control, we document it, we also test it, and based on that work, then we design our audit procedures. If we feel there's some extra risk in a particular area, then we do more audit procedures in that area. For instance, cash,
Okay.
an obvious one. You know, if we felt there were controls that were not working properly over, cash disbursements, we would design extra procedures to look at that.
And you saw no need or basis for performing extra procedures based on what you saw with the
That's
internal
correct.
control practices?
That's
Okay.
correct.
Thank you. Is there any public comment or question? Well, this is wonderful news. It's always been wonderful news in the past, and it's wonderful news now. Thank you, Mr. Mack, for a job. Very well done. Okay, so then we'll move. Oh, and I'm sorry. I'm clunky up here sometimes. Well, all the time. Thank you for performing the audit for us and for entertaining our questions.
You're welcome.
Okay, so then I guess we'll be done with business services, and we will, in my clunky manner, move on to buildings and grounds. And we're going to have the 2013-2014 capital improvement report, including a mention of the district athletic fields plan. Mr. Kolczewski?
Kolczewski, that's fine.
How about if you say that once more, then I'll say it.
Kolczewski?
Kolczewski?
Just don't look at it when you say it.
Mr. Kolczewski, just don't look at it when I say it. All right.
Then you're fine. So.
Well, thank you very much. This is your first time making this presentation for us?
Yes, for this board. Yes.
All right.
Very exciting.
You'll do better than me, I'm sure. All right, so take it away, please.
All right. Well, thank you for the time. What I'd like to do is first start off on a review of the current fiscal year capital project budget. And I have that included in your board packet, and I also brought copies if anyone needs it. And I have it up here for the general public. Quickly go through that. And the reason I want to go through, I want to specifically talk about the middle school science areas and the project on that. The first two at McKinley are very basic, a roof replacement, asphalt, that was done this summer. Then we'll talk about at Longfellow, we had the gym bleachers are in. I'll skip the science lab for a second. And then same with Whitman, gym bleachers were in. And then the small carpeting, the library was done this summer. The east, the gym bleachers are scheduled. Scheduling things in high school gyms are difficult, but we have it scheduled in April, and then a carpeting job was completed in the summer. Similar at West, the bleachers scheduled in June, and it's nice, we have the gym floor, so when you can work those two together, rip out the bleachers, do the whole floor, then put in the bleachers, it's a nice thing. The one thing I wanted to talk about was the science labs. When I started this summer, the money was allocated for the science labs, but there was no contract or not even any conversation with any architects or student learning. What do we want to do when we remodel science labs? So we interviewed a couple architects. The one that we decided on or are looking to go with would be Zimmerman, which the district has done numerous projects with. Met with student learning and the architects, and then our initial stages was basically find out what do we need. What are the what does a 21st century middle school science lab have? So we're in that process now. The construction of these science labs, believe it or not, is going to take nearly 3 months to do. You're going to start with a lot of asbestos removal, and then includes relocating fume hoods if possible, the gas, the water. Right now, and learning is different in the traditional science labs. You have your sink on the side of the classroom. The teacher teaches, and students all look over their shoulder. That's much different. It's more round area, so you're putting water and gas in the middle of the room and being able to work in movable furniture. So it's pretty exciting to do. But so we still have the money allocated in this current year fiscal budget for those middle school areas. We'll still use that for the summer. And the reason I wanted to talk about that so much on we're presenting the next year fiscal budget, speaking with architects and what when you go into a project not really knowing it's really tough to budget for, but speaking to them, we had to add a little bit more money for those middle school ones. So that's one of the reasons I want to talk about it so much. That's why it's on there. So I guess with that, if there's any questions on the 12, 13 projects, I'd be glad to entertain them. If not, I'll move right on to the next year's projects.
Mr.
I have
Cronin?
a general question. First, it's very pleasing for me to see someone that's excited about putting gas lines in a science lab. That's my area, and that's a cool thing, so that's good. I like that. For the science labs in the middle school, are these the labs that are mainly used by the 8th graders? Are the 6th and 7th graders getting upgrades in how they do science as well? Or?
Good question. When we looked at this, you obviously can't do, where at Longfellow we're looking at doing 3 rooms, 2 rooms at Whitman. We've tried to pick areas, and we just met on this a couple weeks ago, it seems like yesterday, but pick areas that it's not just this is 8th grade science, it's more how can we use this where it's a rotating. So at Whitman, for example, we're looking at doing
It's not a hard copy.
a room, but then also next to it would be a traditional classroom, if you will. So the whole idea of 21st century learning, as I understand it from a building perspective, that it's not a teacher's room, how you traditionally think of it. It's a science lab for all activities, so it's worth scheduling, and so it's something to benefit all students, not just 8th grade, if you will. So, and that's one thing at Whitman we're looking at. Currently, we first picked 2 rooms on the upper floor next to each other. We decided to benefit more students. We do 1 upstairs, 1 downstairs, tie a room next to it as a traditional classroom. So then you could really have 2 sections at the same time benefiting from that lab. One's in a lab day, one's in a traditional classroom, or they could work together in the lab and set up. And in the lab, the furniture, it's really neat what's out there, that just because it's a quote-unquote science lab, it can easily be a classroom also. And then the desk raised to make science, and then they can move out of the way, because a lot of the things science is doing is they need space. They don't necessarily need a table.
Okay, thank you.
If there's nothing else, I'll move on to the 13, 14. I'll speak briefly about the science.
Yes,
I'm
Mrs.
sorry.
Weber.
I heard some conversation about lighting for the theater. Do you have any information on that, or what? It was very brief. And
Sure. Nothing for lighting for theater has been brought to my attention. We'll talk about.
Excuse me, it was not lighting, it was sound.
You're a step ahead of me. So you're talking at the West Theater?
Yes.
Yep. And I'll address that right away for the because that's been one area that's identified as need to be updated,
Okay.
and that'll be addressed here in this budget.
What about the storage in the lower level of East Theater? I also heard conversation.
Yes.
I spend a lot of time in theater, that's why I'm
Yeah, you're well addressed in the theater storage. That good question on that. Where we're currently at is I left another message for Mr. Hughes today. We're trying to play a little phone tag. That the Booster Club there has been really active in raising funds and to revamp that whole area. So that's what we've got proposals on: adding electrical, adding sprinklers, and then I guess the club itself has volunteers that would add. What we're talking about is changing rooms, makeup, things like that. So that's something that we want to do. It's not a capital project item, because it's really a Booster Club fundraising, and there'll be some support from the district for for like our district electricians to help wire the areas and things like that. So,
Is there any conversation about restrooms? That is very difficult. At East, you have to go up to the balcony, a bathroom, or on the third floor, and it's not accessible. So, did you look at that at all?
We haven't looked at that yet. I'm not, I guess you're the first person to bring that to my attention.
Well, you'll hear from me again.
It's noted. Thank you.
This is why we have board meetings.
Yeah, appreciate it. Well, I'll go through the format I use for 1314 is very similar to what Mr. Bruce Johnson used in the past. What he did is separate each building and then give a estimated project cost, and then what I did is I met with each building administration and went through the previous ones. And a good example is trying to update it where they have projects such as solar hot water heater. There's some ideas on that. Solar hot water heaters were a really, really good idea 8-10 years ago. So, the price of natural gas, the way it's gone, the payback's not there. So to do something that financially, I took it off this. So we tried to update it and meet with the different principals. What I always tell the principals, though, this is the reason I do it on Excel instead of a PDF is because it can always be updated. So what I'm working in next year presentation, I hopefully should have, I wanted to have it this time, is to work on, instead of here's everything we're doing this year, here's everything we have on the notice for sometime in the future, is to work on more of a 5 or 10 year plan, and that helps principals too to know what, we want to do something when I know it's coming up in this year, and that probably helps myself and probably helps board members communicate what's coming up in the future. So, what I'll do is right now is just briefly address the 1314. Scroll down. I had for Longfellow and then also for Whitman extra $60,000. That'd be to additional supplement the middle school science room remodels, and had what Mrs. Weber commented on the at Tosa West to update the sound system for the theater, and that was $100,000. And I've met started with Mr. Clarko and had we had 5 staff members and theater folks at West, and then in January we're gonna, well, as long as the board is in favor of it, to move through and getting proposals from different companies. And one of the reasons that when they had their recent performance, what I was told from the theater folks is they had to borrow a lot of equipment that because the stuff we had wasn't working, and to get it up to standards. So. And then also the $365,000 for each high school was for the science room remodel. What the intent would be is summer of 2013 to be a busy science model remodel. Even though middle school, the majority of middle school is in last year's budget, and this year we'd look to do all the projects this summer. So we'll be tearing up some science rooms. And then one of the things I probably spend most of the time talking about is the Fisher behind us, the Brightlow Field, is to add a baseball diamond. And I want to speak a little bit about that. I believe in the packet there was a map drawn, and I have some extra copies I'll leave here. When you go back for athletic projects like this, I'm sure everyone stays up at night reading the 2006 athletic field planning report. It was something.
2 of the current board members were on the Buildings and Grounds Committee that produced that report.
Okay.
I may ask Mrs. Muehlfeld to comment on the process later on. Go ahead.
Fantastic. So in that report, going back, I think the number 1 item to be addressed was what was addressed at West, the restroom, concession buildings, the entryway. The number 2 item was Brightlow Field of adding an additional baseball diamond, and then relocating the tennis courts. Obviously, with a few years ago, the tennis court project at West, we don't really see the usage. The teams don't practice here. We have that there. So it was brought to me, how do we add a baseball field? Some of you know that's my, funny enough, that's my previous life is running baseball stadiums. So one thing I thought of right away is when you do a project like this, a sizable project, how can we do it beyond just high school teams? We've talked before, we have the high school season out here, and when that's done, the field's vacant. So what can we do to make this more of a community asset and to use these groups? So one of the things I suggested that we really investigated and seeing that the administration really enjoyed was doing, and I'll use Field Turf as kind of the Kleenex name. There's a couple other brands, but Field Turf's the most recognizable. And give you a point of reference, what Hart Park has the football field, that would be Field Turf. It's actually the brand. And you can do a Field Turf infield. Brookfield Central just did one. There's Sun Prairie did one that would be similar to us. And the advantage when you do a Field Turf infield, for one, it can take 40 gallons of water per minute. So it can rain all day. But really what I personally think is the biggest thing is that on a traditional baseball field you have 90-foot bases. Well, I should maybe backtrack for those of you who aren't as familiar with baseball as I am, that a traditional baseball field, you have grass on the infield, and you have dirt baselines, and then the dirt where the infielders play, referred to as skin, and then the batter's box, and then a clay mound. When you do a Field Turf infield, the whole infield, including the batter's box, the dirt, the mound, is turf. So by doing that, it still looks brown, but it's just brown turf instead of green turf. And then the white lines are just white turf instead of chalk. And the same with the batter's box. And so what you can do with that is even the pitcher's mound now they make to pitch on. So for maintenance-wise, it's amazing how little maintenance there is compared to redoing the mounds every day, redoing the batter's box. But really what I see the true community benefit is that you have those 90-foot bases for a high school game. When that game's over, you can easily put in the 60-foot bases for Tosa League game. When that game's over, you can just move the bases back 10 feet for the 12-year-old games and so forth. It is they call it wheelchair friendly, so it can be used by it's crushed rubber with a little bit of sand, and then so you can roll wheelchairs on it. I've heard mixed reviews. I have two close friends in wheelchairs. One says he loves it, one says he hates it. So, but then you can also do your bullpens with that. You can do the whole area. So, the idea to be able to move the bases to accommodate your 7-year-olds playing and then follow with the high school game, I think is truly really neat. So the proposal we had was to add another field, but then on both of them make them a Field Turf infield with that. So I guess I can speak on this all day. Usually my wife cuts me off when I talk about baseball. So the one question we commonly get is currently both of our high schools play summer league, WIA, as most people know. There's outside of the Milwaukee area, most schools in the state play in the spring. When you have a Field Turf, if you had spring baseball, you can actually play your games all spring when it rains. And talking to WIA, they said there's 57 schools currently in summer baseball. I said, well, at what number do you eliminate summer baseball? And they said 64. So that was their old threshold. So it's something they review every year. So what I've told people, this isn't something we're doing anticipating it, but it puts us in a really good position. If they do eliminate summer baseball, it'd be a very easy transition for facility-wise. So I'll just go through the total project. The scope of it is the $1.3 million. You see, we're estimating costs, and these estimates, Zimmerman, and they've done projects like this, and they've so they're very. I think they're very good estimates. The new diamond reconstruction, just the new one at $860,000. Adding the turf portion of that is around $250,000 if you're looking. So you still have quite a bit of cost. Now you could say if you didn't do turf, you did a traditional, would it be minus $250,000? Well, no, because you still have the cost of construction and infield and a mound and such. The existing diamond renovation to do a Field Turf infield, and we'd be adding a warning track on that, would be $375,000. And then the other costs, we in this plan, the tennis courts have to be eliminated to accommodate that. looking at adding a playground. For those of you that enjoy recreation park playgrounds, there's two types of playground equipment. You have a 2 through 5 year old playground equipment, then you have a 5 through 12 year old equipment. All the equipment we currently have here is 5 to 12 year old. So we have students in the school, 4 year old. We technically don't have the proper size equipment for them. So we'd be adding a playground. Not only, and it's something that I think would benefit the whole area, not just the students here. And then adding small $15,000 for like a lightning detection weather system, and that would be at the school. And it's becoming more and more common especially for baseballs when they play in the spring and summer for lightning detection. So I guess with that, the couple questions I commonly get: this project does not include lights or does not include a sound system. That is a common question we get. And I guess with that, I guess love to hear what questions you have, and hopefully I can answer them. Is it Randall?
Sorry. I think Dr. Erdl has something to add about the athletic fields plan, and then we'll move over to you.
The athletic fields plan, and I know the people listed on there were board members involved in that, and that was a process back in 2006 that was undertaken, and like Tom had mentioned, the fields have been the number 2 priority, or the baseball field, adding an additional baseball field. One of the things, and I know that I've been involved in those conversations, certainly in the past 4 years, every time it's been brought up, I haven't been in favor of adding that diamond, and in part, the big part is when I look out the window and I see that vast area being underutilized. And I thought if we're just going to add another baseball diamond, it's going to sit there and be an albatross. Currently, I think our baseball diamond, in my opinion, it's just not used like it could be. And I think when Tom came up with the idea of the turf, and I had a lot of discussions with other people about how that could be used, from, as he mentioned, all the youth teams to just the neighborhood kids coming playing a game of kickball, I think would be pretty awesome. But even the property that's currently used, when you come out on a Saturday or Sunday morning and see all the soccer teams that are playing, he has plans drawn up of where the soccer fields could fit right inside the outfield. So we would have more soccer fields, and the soccer fields actually would be in better shape than what we currently have now, where the land is kind of rutted up a little bit and kind of torn up. So I thought this was a really good idea. I think it's one of those things where we look at our facilities. We're limited in Wauwatosa with our facilities and what we can do. We have some old buildings, and we take great pride in our school buildings and our facilities, and we're limited to what we can upgrade and what we can do. And I don't think we accept mediocrity in anything else. And I think that holds true for all of our facilities, and I think this is just a perfect way of sending that message, too, of having great facilities in our school district and for our community.
Finished, Mr.
Yes.
Mrs. Weber, please.
I really am pleased with the input that you have, looking at that. This is a very special field. I don't know if anyone explained to you why it's the Brightlow Field. I won't go into that right now, but it's precious to this community. During the spring particularly, you spoke a little bit about it. There's always, with the rainy weather, a difficult time preparing the soil or the field. This would correct that, correct? We won't have to wait for a period of hours to play on that when the second game is scheduled. I'm not making myself very clear, but
yeah, the drainage for this infield, and that's really when you have rain, what you're really concerned about is the infield. And they said it sounds crazy, but it can take 40 inches of rain a minute. So it can literally pour. Then when it stops, you can go out and play. So it's really amazing how the drainage works to be able to play. So essentially, unless you don't want to play while it's raining, that'd be the only time you'd have a rain out.
have you looked at the field at Whitman at all to observe what there might be? Is there any need for some addressing there?
Well, it's funny you bring that up. Speak briefly on that. For the softball teams, the West softball team would play at Whitman. Those are also big recreation field. The WIAA as a new mandate for 2014 season, they must have an outfield fence between 100, I believe it's 185 feet and 185 and 230 feet. If you put that at that diamond, it could no longer be used for recreation purpose. So we didn't want to take that up. So we, with the athletic director Gabrielson that's here, we looked at what else do we have in the site. We actually identified a field right behind the football bleachers at West that I would at best describe it as a sandlot field. And we had this same problem with East because they play at Hart Park, and the city's not going to put up a permanent fence and say we can't play recreation ball in it. So at East, we identified a field at the corner of 80th and Meineke, lower at Longfellow, that they currently practice on. So it was for a price of, I believe, one field was $15,000, the other was $14,000. To redo it and make the product is actually called Magic Mix. It's a high drainage product, so when it rains, it dries very, very well. We had both of those fields redone, and then it should be this week to add permanent fencing around that. So I don't know if that answers your question. So you look at the fields of Whitman, we'll still maintain those fields of Whitman, but those will really be practice. If they're used for our students, to be practice fields, but the majority would be recreation or recreation department. Where actually the varsity field for girls softball for West would be behind the West football bleachers. So right now you look at there, it's just the infield, and the fencing should be up hopefully this week, honestly. I was hoping it'd be today. So.
Did you look at the condition of the tennis courts at Longfellow?
Yes. We were actually talking about that today. What would be best there? And I don't know. I'd like to have more discussion on that when we do something. I see that as a need for, when the student, it's amazing, middle school students, when they have recess, they like to just kind of hang out on hard surfaces. So how could those tennis courts, if they're used for tennis, but then also how could we upgrade it to maybe even make an additional basketball court or kind of an area for the students to hang out. So yeah, that's definitely a concern. I don't have an answer for that. We have it. It's definitely noted for future projects along.
Mrs. Weber, one of the things we're going to be doing is getting, obviously there's a lot of people that are on this committee that aren't around anymore, but we're going to get a fields committee back together and start looking at all the facilities again. I know you mentioned Whitman. I don't know if you were commenting on the soccer area as well, and that's an area we have to look at with that field and go from there. But we're going to have that committee back together and start looking at facilities again.
This community truly values their events through the rec department. This is a dumb question. Where is rugby played? Is there any facility for rugby?
To my knowledge, there was no rugby team this current school year. So I believe in the past it's been here at Fisher. But,
Mr. Channon, please, where is rugby played?
The resident expert.
And
Yeah.
Mr. Channon, perhaps you could let us know your credentials in this area, which are considerable.
I've helped coach the girls team here, and
Okay.
The rec department has a summer program, and they do tend to play in the fields behind Fisher in the summer. The girls program this fall was unable to have enough students, and they merged with Brookfield. But the boys team, which actually kicked off last year, was quite large. I believe they played their games at Longfellow, which is a fairly narrow field and does have some obstacles along the side of it that make it not ideal. When the girls' teams played their matches, they played on the turf at Hart Park.
I think with the rugby and soccer and lacrosse has become very popular. I think you'll see that in the future years for addressing a lot of those through the West site.
The land is very precious.
Agreed.
Thank you.
Mrs. Randall, please.
This is a long time coming.
I've only been here 6 months. So.
Sorry, I didn't.
I don't know what you want.
Oh my gosh, that was good. I'm going way back.
Ledger,
Yeah.
one for him.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yes, I'm sorry if that's really sounded to you like like I meant that way. No, there's such an interesting history about, this building and these grounds and the way the community went to bat for them a number of years ago when they were probably going to be sold. So it's really, as each improvement has been made and as the Montessori school came in and all of the different things that are happening here, it's just incredible. And I've talked to neighbors, when I stop in for meetings or whatever, and they stop me and say, we are so happy to see kids in this building. We're happy to see kids on the playground again. So I'm really, really happy that we now have a real plan. In 6 months, that's pretty good. But I'm thrilled, and in keeping with what we have been doing, I appreciate the effort to do it right. The other part of that is I've got one email, but I believe that there are other groups in the community who have been involved in planning.
Yeah, when it first started internal, the first meeting I was involved in was June, shortly after I started, and with athletic directors, things like that, and we looked at the site, we made some changes, and then November 28th, in this very room, we invited a group of users of the field, high school down to the junior Trojan, junior Raider, all variety of groups, presented this and wanted feedback from those groups. We had some really very good suggestions, some small, some big, and a lot of questions, and it was, I kind of joke, you're presenting a baseball field to baseball enthusiasts, so it wasn't the hardest presentation to make. I actually see a lot of those. So we tried to engage those groups that would be using this. So, there some concern we have, on this, we're getting rid of the 2 small fields. So that's what we wanted to explain to those groups. They use those small fields. We're not stealing that for high school. We're doing it and trying to explain the big picture. I felt it's better for them to hear it from me and then to hear it through the rumors and the coffee shops and things like that. So, it was good. I've got a lot of emails with very random questions, but all good questions. So, yeah,
and so will this increase community use?
I think it would be amazing the use you'll get.
Okay. And then, so my question for Mr. Mack is, this has been on our previous presentations as a future expense, never quite at this cost. So can we afford it, and how can we afford it? And will it be part of the next?
The cost is right in part of our capital budget. Mm-hmm. So that cost is just, what we did is put this on a priority over roofs or whatever. But I think if you go back in time and remember, we actually had this project up on the slate, but it was cut because we had to make budget reductions. And now it's coming back because we're more on a normal cycle. So the money's there for this. And even myself, when I saw all of this, I would just add that I think doing the field turf is definitely worth it as long as the whole community gets to use this. Mm-hmm. And that's, I think, the key selling point is if it was just for high school, I don't think it'd be worth it. But for little kids and for soccer, for everybody to use this, you're going to get a lot of use out of this, and it's going to be a very attractive thing to play on.
Okay, thank you. And I do very much appreciate your background. And I think it brings a lot to the proposal. Thank you.
Mr. Carter, please.
Thank you. I'm still in a pretty good mood about the science labs, but I still have a couple questions.
All right.
What is the difference in use in experiencing the same wet weather of a magic mix field versus a turf field?
Sure. A magic, well, for one, the price is considerably cheaper, the magic mix. What magic mix is a guy from Appleton area created it, and what he did is he looked at warning tracks always dry out quicker than infields. So he tried to say, well, why don't we just use the material we use in warning tracks, which is just crushed granite rock? How can we make it, I should backtrack, in a typical warning track, when a player slides in it, you're almost guaranteed to rip your pants. So how can we not just put that on an infield where you're going to tear balls and pants, But how do we have a hybrid, if you will? So it's a crushed granite that's a little bit rounded and it's broken up much smaller. Now, Magic Mix is basically, put this in good terms, infield conditioner is baked clay. That's all it is. At the top of the infield, it's like an 1/8 inch of small pieces of baked clay. It absorbs water, but it can't absorb a ton of water. We've all seen games and they had to pull out the tarp. Magic Mix is just maybe twice as good as that. So Magic Mix, if you have an untarped field, will be able to take rain during it, but if it rains all day, you're not going to be able to play. If you have a game at 7 o'clock on a Magic Mix field and it rains at a nice 1/2 inch at 5 o'clock, you're not going to be able to play at 7. So, but the turf is, it's gravel based and then rubber and sand so that it drains right through it. So frankly, I don't think there is a comparison. It's just Magic Mix is a step up from the traditional baked clay. It makes it better for softball. When we were doing a softball field, I'm like, we should turf the whole softball field. I think that would be great. If that costs $15,000, no problem. But it doesn't. So I don't know if that answers your question in a roundabout way.
I guess so. The extra cost of the turf field, you think, is worth it for the extra playing time that you get out of it?
If it was kind of as Dr. Earl and Mr. Mack said, that if it was just high school field, I wouldn't feel comfortable presenting this. But the whole idea, by doing turf, it also allows you to do the younger kids, do the 60-foot bases, 70-foot, 80-foot bases. I think that's your true benefit. Instead of limiting yourself to just high school, you're opening it up to all age groups of community.
Okay. And my other question is based on previous discussions we've had as a board when we've gone through this list in previous years. We've had times where we were short on money, and so I or others would suggest instead of spending $2 million on this year, let's spend $1 million and save that money to spend in other places on educational uses or salaries or whatever. And we were always told, well, we're way behind everything we need to do anyway, and cutting back now is just going to make it more expensive in the future. So why doesn't that argument hold now? I mean, what are we not? I see a lot of really important maintenance projects on here,
sure,
and we're not doing any of them. Does that concern you?
Well, I guess I could walk through any building and give you millions and millions of dollars in maintenance projects. What we did, we looked at it. Truly, when it came down to either do this or the west, there's an area west roof. Could we do it? Could we get another year out of the west roof? And it's be the southwest corner. If you look at Google Maps, you can see there's one large area that's still black. That's really what it came down to, in my opinion, was that if that roof, we said no, we had to do it this year, then I think I wouldn't feel comfortable presenting this to it. What the district has always used this roofing consultant, SRI, and we took a good afternoon of walking through it, and I said, I want your honest opinion. Where are we at in the life cycle of this roof? Is this something that you're saying, Tom, we have to replace this year, or is this something you're saying, hey, this roof, I always say, hey, can we get 3 more years out of it, knowing they'll probably be on the budget for next year? And he said, no, we did 2 repairs and said, you're fine, you can get a couple more years out of it, but it's definitely, but I know what you're getting at, is saying, can we push something else? I mean, every time you do a project, you're not doing 30 other projects. And I say that's probably the hardest part of my job. It's not saying yes and we're going to do a project. It's saying no and explaining why we're not. And that's why I like to do the 5-year plan, and just instead of saying no, we're not going to do it, to show when we're going to do it in the future. And frankly, I had a 5-year plan here. I didn't feel comfortable presenting it just because I wanted more knowledge and more time to be alone in random buildings and see the area. So beyond the science rooms.
No, I see. I mean, you've presented it well, and I see the benefit of having it in the community. But $1.3 million can be used in a lot of different places. We were talking about teacher salaries later, and you could put $1 million into a fund and fund $50,000 a year for teacher bonuses for 20 years, or you could fund extra teachers for reading support or for a number of years. So that's not your decision or problem, but so there are a number of different uses of over $1 million. even if you're not using it on maintenance projects. So,
Sure.
but I understand the value of having something like that in the community as well. So I have to think about it some more. It's an interesting project. I see the value, but I just have to give it some more thought.
I say the process, I understand, we're not looking for you to approve a bid. We're trying to present the projects, and then when we go out and solicit pricing and get more details.
Sure, I understand.
I'll be glad to answer any questions between now and then.
Thank you.
Mrs. Muehlfeld, please.
Thank you. I know Dr. Ertl has been keeping the board very informed of your activities, so please understand that he has. And one of the things when he communicated the meetings that you were having with stakeholders, one of my questions was, are the booster clubs going to be there? Are the parents going to be there? Are the district officials going to be there? Really having a good mix of stakeholders at the table when you were able to present this latest version of the turf and the baseball field plan and your vision. And you've articulated tonight that, in fact, you have received a lot of feedback. I'm looking forward to receiving additional feedback. I have received some from the community. And really, the history of the committee in 2006 was bringing together the community fundraising efforts with the district plans for improvement. And I can say that in my many years of service, I have been very pleased to see how much the district puts into improving their properties, whether they be fields or any kind of systems, and as well as their buildings, keeping our roofing, and because some districts, they don't do that, and they really have problems later on because their buildings are not maintained, their fields are not maintained. So I'm very glad to hear your philosophy on that. You answered my question on roofing, because that is a concern to me, obviously, that we make sure that we continue on our roofing path. And you will be bringing back a 5-year plan. So I see this as an investment. I think you have articulated the advantages to the community. We're also going to be improving our science and our educational. And those were other things that we had said we wanted to do within the next year. So I'm very pleased to see it. I was wondering, though, with the fields, because there will be so much use on the fields, will there be places for people to store equipment with so many different? I mean, that was one of the considerations when we talked about expanding the fields at Hart Park. What kind of storage facilities would be there for the schools and the different teams that would play there, and the identities of the groups as well. So if you go to a baseball game for the Trojans, or you go to a baseball game for the Red Raiders, will there be some place for them to put their lineup literature and whatever else they might need?
Sure. First, address the storage. We have the current structure out there has the restrooms, concession stand. Our plan includes adding to the south side, adding storage area for the two teams. As far as putting the lineup card, things like that, my brief experience in schools is provide the really nice facility. Those are the easy things to add, and those are when you talk about booster clubs becoming excited. Those are great booster club projects. So we're not opposed to that. One of the I can't believe we missed, and then this group caught on the 28th was a flagpole. I was like, how about a flagpole? I'm like, done. So we're open to really any ideas, and I get I was off this last week, and I got 3 different emails from groups with their very random suggestions, and some were good, and some I thought were a little crazy. But we'll listen to anything. So.
Michael?
Yes, Mrs. Weber.
Just briefly, you have gym addition at Underwood. Do you have any comment on that? I'm wondering where you could get more addition for that.
Sure. I'll get my comment on that. That was a carryover from Mr. Johnson's previous one.
Mm-hmm.
When Underwood, maybe long story short, Underwood was the last principal I met with, was
Jenny Keats.
Thursday the 29th. And, and I met with her. And when I met with all these principals, I went through each one. I submitted this. I was out starting the 30th, a little baby girl, on the 30th. And so I submitted this without getting to speak with her and really go through that. So the Underwood one, I asked her, is that something, what's the history on that? What's the background? And she basically said, I have no idea. So I still want to talk to Dr. Ertl and Mr. Mack about that. And, and that's the reason a lot of those on the future projects, there's, becoming new, a lot of it was kind of guessing and trying to see how did that get on the list and what does it really mean. So for that particular one, I can't tell you exactly what it's mean, and that's one of the reasons we're not proposing it this year.
Thank you.
Any other board comment? All right. Dr. Ertl and I have discussed this when he wanted to bring this to the agenda. I said, well, we'll need the athletic fields plan then. And the reason why I said that is that kind of the history from 10 years ago is that we found that this community is passionate about sports and athletics and fields, and when money is spent on one thing, a bunch of people with good intentions come and say, well, what about this other thing? There's, like, why not tennis courts at Longfellow, for example? And, why did you do this and that? And why do you want to do this? And what are the motivations, et cetera, et cetera? So what we did was we had the Building and Grounds Committee at the time. There was an athletic field plan produced for that committee. And the thought sort of was that, well, we'll let the professionals and the experts in athletic fields and sports come up with a plan, a prioritized plan, and we'll take the politics out of this, because there's all kinds of second guessing about, well, why are they doing this and blah, 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 and what side of town do they live on and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, oh, gosh, Okay, we got rid of that. And so there was sort of an understanding, not a decision, but there's a lot of weight to the fact that like this plan has prioritization of recommended improvements. Number one was the restroom and concession building, including access at West High School. Okay, number one. Well, number two is additional official baseball diamond at Brightlow Field. Well, sort of along the lines of what you're saying. So if someone says, well, why are you spending money here now, not somewhere else? Well, it's number two on the list, and we took care of number one. That's why. So now, that was 6 years ago. Maybe things changed, maybe not. Dr. Ertl has said he's going to reconvene such a planning committee and update this. And we're assuming that if conditions hold the same, that your proposal, which is also Dr. Ertl's proposal, because you work together, that'll be number one. And that's why I would vote for it, is because, well, that's the next big thing on the list. That's what you're proposing, and that's what I was committed to doing. So that was, so anybody's interested in this, anybody wanting these baseball improvements, well, it is the next thing on the list. Frankly, that's why. It's next. So with that, I'll hand the old plan over to back to Dr. Ertl, and he'll come forward with a new plan. When do you think we'd have a new plan?
I'll let you know.
All right. You'll let us know. All right. Is there any community comment or question on this topic, either on the capital improvement plan or on the athletic fields plan?
I've got a comment.
Oh, please come up and introduce yourself, your name and where you live, please.
My name is David Fish. I'm a Wauwatosa West Sider. And I was a part of Tom's meeting a few weeks ago. I'm working business, and we take stakeholders' input often for key decisions. It's exactly what Tom did. In fact, I was able to put forth one of his suggestions that he took the recommendation and made the change to the field plans which will be accommodating to, I guess, more teams than the original plan. So, Tom, I appreciate that. Second thing is it's been a little bit disheartening looking at the Brightlow field and how the gates have been locked for years. And if I understand Tom's plan moving forward with this new turf infield, because of the maintenance that's not required, it'll be open for, I guess, all the time, giving the community the ability to use it, as well as other teams. So I appreciate those efforts. I think it's going to lead to more use of the community, other teams, and I guess just all-around goodness for baseball.
Great.
Thanks, Tom.
Thank you for your comment. Is there any other comment? Yes, please.
My name is Colleen Belknap, and I live at 2551 North 86th Street on the west side. I wear many hats in the field of baseball. I have 4 children who all currently play baseball, including my daughter who's here today. My son, who was here at the beginning of the meeting, had to leave because there was an open gym for baseball, so he was headed over to hit balls. I also, my children play on the Tosa West varsity and junior varsity teams, and I'm also on the board of directors with Tosa Baseball League Incorporated, and I do have another son who plays in the Junior Trojan program, so I'm around baseball quite a bit. I feel that, at looking back, I've heard about these new fields for a long time. My kids have been playing now for 10 years, and I was very excited once we got through with the new dugouts and the shelters that went in at Brightlow on the 90-foot diamond, and all the huge success that came from both the east and west sides coming together to really create that. I think the fact that, the proposal that Tom has put together, that there is going to be less upkeep and that there's going to be so much more use, is just a huge benefit to this community. When the last few years, as part of Tosa Baseball, I've been involved in what we call our final tournament day, and it's usually held either on a Saturday or Sunday as we wrap up our season for the Tosa Baseball. 620 baseball families and additional 180 girls softball families that play. We have probably close to 500 to 600 people at Brightlow Field and using all the fields throughout the entire day, and it's just an amazing thing to see that many people here and excited about the community of baseball. And I guess the other comment that's been made that I just want to reiterate, that yes, those 90-foot diamonds have been closed and they haven't been available to other teams, and there's been requests for some of the junior teams to play on those, and usually that has been turned down in the past. And I think moving forward, it is really exciting to know that those fields will be available to such a much broader group of children, and that so many people in the community will be able to use those.
Is there any other community comment? Yes, please.
I am Dave Belknap. I obviously share the history with our children in baseball, but Tom paints a very good picture about the future use and opening it up to the community, but I just wanted to add a couple of realities. I'm the freshman baseball coach at Tosa West, and my team 90% of the time practices on that softball field next to Tosa, the West football bleachers. I mean, that's how limited our space is at Brightlow and at Underwood, and using every possible minute of daylight. I mean, my team has to practice on a 60-foot diamond. And our 13-year-old Junior Trojan team this year played their quote-unquote home games on the south side by Mitchell Field. It was the only field access they could get. So in terms of need, the need is great. I mean, we can't accommodate current use for all the people that absolutely have to utilize a 90-foot diamond. So in addition to opening it up to all these other groups and use by younger kids, I mean, it's hard to function right now with what we have. So thank you.
Is there any additional comment? Yes, please.
My name is Bill Scallon. I live at 1945 Wauwatosa Avenue, and I'm here tonight representing Tosa Baseball League. So To add to some of the comments made by the Belknaps, my family's a lot like the Belknaps. We have 4 kids. They all play baseball. Love the sport. And the point I wanted to emphasize is just to make sure that everyone is clear that registration in baseball and the number of programs involved in the Wauwatosa community is continuing to grow. So if you wonder if we're making an investment or considering an investment here, is this something that we'll continue to use? The answer is yes. Colleen's very involved in our registration process, and she can attest to the fact that for Tosa baseball, we have 820 total participants, both between the co-ed baseball program and the girls fast pitch program. That girls fast pitch program has gone from about 80 girls 3 or 4 years ago to a point where we have 220 girls playing in that league now. So the programs that could utilize these fields are growing, and they're growing quickly. We have a lot of other junior programs, that are increasing in size, number of kids playing, and the number of teams available. So this is something that, as you consider it, recognize the fact that, at least as far as baseball is concerned, number of users is going up. Thank you.
Mr. Meyer?
Yes, Mr.
Can I
Quinn.
make a comment?
Yes, please.
I really do see the value of this project, but I have to say I'm so old that my high school went from a cinder track to an asphalt track, so I know what happens when you go to an artificial surface, how nice that can be. But I'm going to throw this out there because I don't actually know the answer. For a new field, not Brightlow Field, but for a new field, is the district open to corporate sponsorship or naming rights to help fund something like this, so we have the money maybe used for other things?
We did change the policy, the board policy, 4 to 5 years ago to allow for that. I know Mr. Gabrielson has UW Milwaukee as a corporate sponsor at basketball games. We continue to try. I know I tried to solicit corporate sponsorships for the West football field, seeing that 140,000 cars see that every single day. Have been unsuccessful at this point, but I think that's important, and I think it's important that we continue to pursue that. Harley-Davidson Field or GE Field.
Partly saying that because I know this is televised and people might see this, so if anyone sees that,
I recognize that.
Also, Mr. Jaros is going to join the Chamber of Commerce, right? So maybe he can help there.
Maybe.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Is there any other community comment or board comment? Mrs. Randall.
Hey, just to clarify.
Oh yeah. Come up, please. We'll defer to the committee.
Okay, before he comes up, this is one of our new Cole.
Come on up. Yes.
Cole Scholarship, Chad Metesky, that I read about. So, Mr. Metesky, congratulations on your Cole Fellowship nomination.
I appreciate it. Thank you. No, I can go. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Chad Metesky, social studies teacher at Wauwatosa West High School. I'm also the varsity baseball coach at Wauwatosa West, so clearly I have a vested interest in hopefully seeing this proposal go through. I can't speak to softball in our district, but I can definitely speak to baseball. Dave Belknap is absolutely right when he talks about us having a shortfall right now in where we can take our game of baseball and our skills and really put something that we can be proud as a community on the field. We struggle to use Underwood. We struggle to get enough teams to be able to use the current single 90-foot diamond. At Brightlow, he's absolutely right when he says we were using a softball diamond. When I was the JV baseball coach 6 years prior to right now, I was back there practicing with the JV team only to make it more manageable at Underwood for the other East and West teams to be able to use that. It was a matter of trying to just free up space for other people, let alone the junior teams and the TBL teams to be able to use Underwood as well. And so I think that when it comes to managing the facilities for fostering a proud baseball tradition in this community as well as the ability of softball, I think this is a must. I really do. I think that baseball is going in the right direction in this community. Again, I can speak from the west side of town. We went from 2 wins 3 years ago to 16 wins this year. There is excitement in our program. Our junior programs are growing exponentially, wanting to play in even more competitive baseball leagues than they were in just playing on tournaments on the weekends. Colleen spoke to the fact that the community came together to put together shelters, because I know dugouts is a swear word in the community. So we came together and we put that together, and we overwhelmed the board meeting that I know that some of the people are at when the community came together to propose it to the city council. I just think that this is a valuable thing to consider for sure. Not just from a can we play baseball games weather-wise, I'm talking safety. Safety of the athletes. Those guys in the grounds crew do the best they can all summer to help keep up that field, but when it really comes down to it, they can't be there as much as we would like to see them there for grass purposes being cut, for keeping right now that field is, this summer in particular, and I know it was a dry summer, that field was dangerous. Bad hops taking off the infield grass and off the infield dirt. I mean, we're at times we're lucky that kids aren't getting injured out there. And on this field that he's proposing, you will get pure hops. You will not be putting somebody in danger of doing exactly what we've coached them to do, being fundamentally sound in where they're putting themselves to make a play. And a bad hop ricocheting off and hit him in the eye or something. And that kind of thing will most likely not happen on this type of field. So from a safety perspective, I think that this is a great investment. I just think that I hope that you guys, I know it's a lot of money. I do recognize that. I just think that it's a great opportunity, not just for the high school kids, but also for the lower level kids, and even through the rec department for people like Mike Morgan in the back who plays in men's leagues. They could play on that field too, maybe through the rec department, and be able to pay to use the field, which would bring in some revenue for the school district as well. I mean, I think there's lots of uses for that space that we can stop to hopefully realize and recognize could exist if you guys are willing to push through the proposal for us. Thank you.
Is there any additional comment? May I say thank you very much to all of you who attended on this topic, and particularly to those who spoke. It's been just a wonderful thing to have this conversation here with you. We have so many meetings on so many topics where there's no one from the community here to talk with us, and it just makes it, I think, a lot better meeting for the community when we have this participation. So thank you so much. With that, we'll look forward to Dr. Ertl announcing the convening of the Planning Committee for the next athletic fields report, and to his announcement about when he anticipates the report to be finished.
And if I can just clarify the process for these fields is that we will be moving forward and bringing forward proposals for the board to vote on to begin the work on it.
Okay, well, thank you. Are we ready to move on then? All right, thanks. The next topic is student learning and the Human Growth and Development Curriculum Report with Director of Student Learning, Beth Ehrenberger. Hello, would you like to please introduce your panel of participants? Ms. Ehrenberger? After you get yourself ready there.
That's the only place that we have a nice view.
Not a West people.
Okay, good evening. With me this evening, I have our two content team leaders for health, I have Andrea Powers, who is our elementary content team leader, and I have Meg Arndorfer, who is the secondary content team leader, and I also have Dave Dettinger, the secondary student learning coordinator. Tonight we are here to share with you our progress and to present to you our curriculum for the Human Growth and Development, our Human Growth and Development program that had been reviewed last year with the Human Growth and Development Advisory. As you will note, we have put this presentation on the district website, so I'm just going to reference that as we go through the presentation this evening. I would also like to note to the public that may be listening that tomorrow morning we will have all the links that we are showing you this evening available on the front page of the website under Human Growth and Development Curriculum Review. So if you'll note that we start on the website with the supporting documents for our curriculum. Those are the state statute, the Wisconsin state statute. So we have that posted there for easy access for people that would like to look at and reference what the legislation says in regard to human growth and development. Next, we have Board Policy 2414, which was also used to inform the development of our curriculum. So there's a link to that as well, so for easy access. The third document there is the background information that was provided last year in January. We talked about the Human Growth and Development Advisory Committee, and this is a summary of who was on the advisory committee and the work of that committee. The following document following that is the advisory summary recommendations, and those summary recommendations were also used to inform the curriculum development. So far we've got a state statute, board policy, and committee recommendations or advisory recommendations. And then the fourth document that was used to inform the curriculum was the National Sexuality Education Standards. These standards came out actually last January. They are aligned to the national health standards. The Wisconsin health standards are aligned to the national health standards. So there's a very interconnectedness between these documents. So next we have the first document that was created in regard to our curriculum, and that is a scope and sequence document. So as you look at this document, this would be a quick review for any parent or teacher wanting to see at what grade levels curriculum, human growth and development topics are being taught. This is after we've done our revisions. In some cases, it helped to guide us to where we were trying to have our curriculum be developmental. We really wanted to focus, since we have an opportunity to update the curriculum, on having it be a meaningful curriculum that is delivered with intent, not random activities on human growth and development topics. So this is a developmental document. As you can see here, we have anatomy and physiology as one of the main headers, puberty and adolescent development, identity, pregnancy and reproduction, and sexually transmitted diseases, and healthy relationships, and personal safety. And these are the topics that are used in the National Sexuality Standards. So we use the topics that they were using. We did not use the National Sexuality Standards document. It's an entirety. It wouldn't be possible. I mean, there's much more there to teach. Some things weren't appropriate for teaching in Wauwatosa, as our advisory council advised us, and some of the topics just, are things that we'd be teaching a lot more, probably wouldn't have enough time. So we made decisions about what was essential. The next document that you'll see posted on the website is the elementary topics. This is a summary of just topics for somebody at a glance. We are going to use these topics for the parent letters. So if you are a kindergarten parent and you want to know what human growth and development topics are covered in kindergarten, these will be the topics that will be presented in the parent when we inform parents of what's being taught. So this is a quick summary of those topics that will be put in parent letters and in parent notifications. So we made that for easy access. There are topics for elementary, and there are also topics for secondary. The next document that we have is the curriculum documents. And these are actually this is the actual curriculum that we're proposing. And so what we have is an articulated curriculum that has the focus area, benchmarks that are aligned to the National Sexuality Standards. Then the next, so at elementary, middle, and high school, all of our curriculum is designed in the same way. Then we have the activities and resources that are needed to support the teaching of that benchmark, and we have assessments. You won't always see assessments in every document because in some cases we don't assess that particular topic. In other cases you're going to see assessments where they may be a cumulative assessment, but you're going to see a lot more as students are older in the curriculum. You'll see a lot more intentional assessment of learning of human growth and development topics. I'm going to ask Andrea to take a minute and just talk about the elementary document. She's going to describe for us just in general what's different about human growth and development curriculum at the elementary level as a result of our advisory and the work on this curriculum document.
First, we'd like to thank the members of our content team that have worked on this. I'd like to thank the content team members that worked with us the last few years and for their efforts with the curriculum writing. We had Edie Schaffner, 5th grade teacher at McKinley, Karen Zimmerman, social worker at Washington, Lynn Mazirian, school counselor at Madison, Emily Rathey, 1st grade teacher at Eisenhower, Lisa Reardon, a school counselor at Roosevelt, and Sally Ropey, our district nurse. So the general consensus is that our curriculum needed some updating. So we began by looking at recommendations from our advisory committee last year and reviewed materials and wrote the benchmarks. And one recommendation that really guided our committee work was something from the medical experts on the advisory committee, was that we should provide students with information before they would actually need it. And so some of the topics that we have highlighted in the document would be topics we would introduce maybe a grade level sooner than what we do already. So I'll just point out the 5 main changes. One would be including discussion of the proper names for body parts of males and females in 2nd grade. It's currently covered in 1st. We'd continue that in 2nd grade. We would also like to add the topics of the male and female reproductive systems, including body parts and their functions. We'd be adding that to 4th grade and then continuing with 5th grade as we have it now. We would also add information about menstruation and proper use and disposal of pads for girls only in 4th grade. Also, to be in accordance with the school board policy, we would also include information about defining sexual orientation for 4th and 5th grade. We'd also look at discussing gender roles and stereotypes and promoting tolerance, dignity, and respect for all people. And we'd also look at influences, including media, friends, etc., that affect decision making. We also would add in definitions of sexual harassment in 3rd through 5th grade, and also look to add information about sexual abuse in 3rd grade. It's currently in 4th and 5th, and also discussing where to go for help if you need support in those instances. Those would be some of our main changes we'd be looking to make to the elementary level.
And now I'm going to ask Dave to speak to the middle school and the changes that are there.
Thank you. And I, too, would like to thank Lauren Walter, who is one of our middle school teachers who worked extensively with Meg on the middle school 6th, 7th, and 8th grade curriculum. One thing I think that's important is 2 things that are going to keep coming up are the National Sexuality Education Standards, which really directed our thinking in our curricula. And then the other is this advisory committee, which really directed our thinking as well. And I think the intersection of those 2 really directed the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. And what I'd like to point out is that it's not just topics or content that are covered in 6th, 7th, and 8th, but it's also critical thinking skills, just as it might be in any academic course. So the students are taught to access and evaluate information in the context of human growth and development issues such as puberty, adolescence, gender, or sexual orientation. The students are supported in communicating in difficult situations with diverse community members, with parents. That's a recurring theme that we help the students from K through 12, K-10, identify adults that they trust and their own parents, and that they communicate with those adults around sensitive issues. Also, communication as it relates to technology. So, texting, cell phone, obviously a really big issue in today's market with young kids. Decision making, how students make decisions in the area of puberty and adolescent development, how they make decisions with their relationships. And the last one that I would point out is an issue of personal safety, which is really important in these days with bullying, harassment, etc., so that students are taught to analyze that and talk about the causes behind that, how they respond to that, and how, again, they might deal with those issues.
And now Meg is going to do the high school.
All right. I would, again, personally like to thank Lauren Walter as well, just for helping me out with the curriculums. And then also our advisory, and also John Simon and Mike Richards for helping out at the high school level. Really, the only major change at the high school level is adding the identity section to our curriculum. We did not have anything in our curriculum, or we do not have anything in our curriculum right now that talks about sexual orientation or gender roles, things like that. So that is the major change at the high school level. Otherwise, honestly, the advisory just asked that we teach the same concepts, except for just make the activities and the assessment more meaningful and just more interactive with the students. Right now it's more lecturing, to be honest. And so I think when we make them more meaningful and interactive, the kids learn more. So at the high school, that's what we are emphasizing. And honestly, kind of I sound like a broken record. This is exactly, especially what Dave was talking about with analyzing influences and decision-making, self-management, interpersonal communication. Those are all major standards for our health curriculum.
And I think that does speak to the scope and sequence from K through 10.
So that's what we just continue to reemphasize at the high school level, but hopefully challenge them a little bit more at our level compared to the lower levels.
Okay, and all three of those the middle school is 3 separate documents. So there's an SK document for curriculum, a 6th, 7th, and 8th grade document, and a grade 10 document that will be posted tomorrow morning. And you can see in detail in those documents, once again, just to remind people that the document has included in it the benchmark and then activities that align to that benchmark. And that's going to relate to the next thing that's on this website, and that is the resources. We are not asking the board to adopt any resource to support the curriculum. Rather, this is a list of what resources informed what we're using. And the reason is that there's just no one resource that would fit our district's personalized needs. So first, for elementary, here's a list of children's books that are being recommended to support the human growth and development curriculum. Next on this list is you're going to find the videos that would be used for the puberty in 4th and 5th grade. And then we also have some additional resources. Some of these relate for parents seeking more information, but other resources that we used. We did use some activities from a flash. It's called Kings County Government Health Services website. It's free, and everything on it is free. They have activities aligned by grade level. They have a complete comprehensive developmental curriculum, which we're not asking to adopt. We are just asking you to review the activities that we pulled from that site for use. And then we also took several activities from Our Whole Lives, which is a sexuality education program that is published by the Unitarian Universalist Association of Congregations. It is a public school version, but there are many resources we use there. And again, the National Sexuality Standards. We also used some of the lessons from our social studies curriculum and our student services second step program, which is used at the elementary level and at the 6th grade level. So some of those resources we already have in our district. So we did not seek to add additional. There's no cost to any of these that we are going to need. At the secondary level, the resources that are being used, again, we use the Flash resource, which actually the website is here for anyone that wants to view the resource. They certainly could. It's easy to access with this web link, and it's also, again, a free website. It also has information for parents as well, if they would like. And then here's some other resources that we took activities out of. We're trying to give credit to where the activities came from. So all of those resources are here for the secondary level as well. Okay. And then the next thing on here is a media resource rubric. There was a discussion with the advisory council about one of the problems we have is that there's a lot of things out on human growth and development topics that we teach, like new activities, maybe a new video link that might be really useful, and teachers have been very shy about using those because they are not approved whenever the curriculum is approved. So sometimes, unfortunately, in the past, we've used some very dated things as we've waited for better things to come out. It is hard. It's hard to find quality resources in this particular topic. So the Department of Public Instruction has a rubric that the Advisory Council looked at. This is a rubric that has some criteria about what media or an activity should include, and it's aligned. We tweaked it to align to criteria that we think is important to Wauwatosa. So we have this put in as a way if a teacher came across something they would like to use and it's in alignment with our benchmark, we could have 3 reviewers from the advisory. It would either be a community member, a parent, administrator, or human growth and development content team leader. At least 3 of those representatives would have to review it, and if there was consensus that we'd like to be able to say that it could be used, using the criteria that's here and the consensus from a subcommittee of the advisory. So that's that rubric is there for viewing. There's also a staff development proposal. The staff development proposal came out of discussion at the advisory in several ways. Concern about who teaches our human growth and development curriculum, and also are our teachers, all of our teachers, prepared to talk about and address really important topics like gender roles and sexual identity, and how much education and background have they had on that, since it's a new topic for us. So what we're proposing here is that the advisory, this is from the advisory, should be taught by a teacher that has an interest, a comfort level, or the appropriate training to provide a meaningful learning experience for students, to deliver the curriculum with integrity. Also, that the preferred model is not a school-wide delivery model. Unfortunately, right now at Longfellow, all teachers are delivering human growth and development, and there was concern that that may not be the best delivery model, that we might be better off putting that into a curricular area. In 6th grade, adolescent studies teaches it, and that works. But in 7th and 8th grade, it's been an all-school delivery model. There was also, and I'm sorry, I'm like losing my touch here for scrolling down. One sec. Here we go. And then also to provide training for those individuals that would be teaching the human growth and development curriculum. We would like to, there are several online trainings that we found, training topics like how to teach the ABCs of sex education, other training videos on how to not only teach but how to support staff and students with LGBTQ issues. There's some training videos on STDs and how to have the conversation with different age levels. So what we'd like to do is to be able to develop a training that our content team leaders, in collaboration with our student services personnel, would provide for those people that would be teaching the curriculum. And then separately from that, there was a need for maybe all teachers in the district to have some type of staff development on sensitive issues like sexual orientation and gender identity, and how they might address those topics as they come up, not just as an educational topic in a classroom, but just as those topics may come up randomly in a classroom. So we wanted to look at some training to be able to provide that would be on that issue for our teaching staff. Then we have parent communication recommendations. Recommendations for parent communication. I first want to remind anyone listening to this presentation that state law allows any parent that wishes to opt their child out of the human growth and development curriculum is allowed to do so by state statute. And we are also required by law to inform parents prior to the teaching of human growth and development topics that we will be teaching them, and so that parents have an opportunity to consider the teaching of those topics. So our parent communications, we are to recommend that we've sent parent letters. So at the elementary level, the parent letter included with registration forms and fee days where they could get an overview of everything that's taught grades kindergarten through grades 5. We also talked about using Alert Now as a way to, if we either send a letter, possibly use Alert Now to remind parents when the puberty topics are going to be taught at 4th and 5th grade. Use that as a way to send a reminder out. We also talked about establishing a district-wide elementary human growth and development parent night. Right now, that is left to individual schools, and we feel that we don't have the consistency or people, the comfort level or expertise for those presentations. So having like one night where all parents are invited. Post our human growth and development on the district website. Everything that you see posted now would be things that would be posted permanently on our website for viewing at any time. And to still create like a summary brochure that could be posted to the website, but also be available at parent conferences or in student services offices, so that those individuals could have meaningful conversations with parents around what human growth and development curriculum is taught. At the secondary level, the use of Alert Now to be able to remind parents when human growth and development topics are going to be taught, to again post on the website, and to also have some kind of brochure that's web-based and could be in print, and then to establish a parent night as well at the secondary level. And last document on here is the sample parent letter that was created by the advisory to standardize the form, and then for the teacher to insert the topics that we showed you at the very beginning. We determined the topics that needed to go into the letter so that we were providing accurate information to our parents in this letter so that they could opt their child out if they wanted to do so. So that is a culmination of the work that went on with the curriculum. Also attached here on the website, you will find the activities. You can see that there are many blue links. So parents can view most of these activities from home if they have access to the internet and can go to the district website. Anything that is in dark print will be available in the student learning office for review, and anything in the blue you can connect to on the internet and actually see the activity. So there's a lot here. There may be in some cases more activities than we'll be able to use as we do lesson design, but we wanted to have a pool of resources to be able to select from. So parents can have access to reviewing any of these activities. And I believe that is everything that's on the website, and it's a culmination of the work that's been done. There are a few next steps, and they are that we want to make sure we refine the parent letters. So we need to actually get the topics and set each letter up. We want to develop a glossary of terms that are developmentally appropriate, so that when teachers are teaching terminology, that we have consistency in that conversation. We also want to take now the benchmarks and the activities and convert those into lessons. Meg has already done some of that at the high school level, but we still need to do, and some of the elementary work has been done, but we want to actually create the individual lessons so who is ever teaching the curriculum will receive the lesson and know how to use the activity and what benchmark they are addressing with that activity. And then we need to develop the training model. So to actually do that and to identify who we would train, we would train Andrea and Meg and also possibly some student services members as well. And then who would we train? And who's going to teach this? And at 7th and 8th grade, are we going to embed this in what content area? Where can we put the curriculum? Where the advisory was to put the curriculum as close to a related topic as possible. So to have some decisions made on that. And then lastly, who should teach the course so that we have a meaningful curriculum that's current and relevant for our students. That's it.
Okay, well, thank you. Is there any board question or comment? Mr. Croner, please.
I'll start. I know I've been impatient for this presentation, and I'm really, really happy with the work all of you did. It's a big surprise to see how great it turned out. I mean, not a surprise, but I'm really pleased. I didn't mean it that way. I took a look at it online. I was really pleased. I think it's a huge step forward for our district to have gender identity type lessons and sexual orientation lessons so that as kids develop, their sexuality develops, they understand what might be happening to them and feel comfortable with what's happening and not be afraid. And I think for the kids that are lesbian, gay, bisexual, or transgender, that they will feel more comfortable in our schools, because I think this will hopefully help the entire student population have a better understanding and tolerance for people that are different than they are. So I'm really pleased to see this move forward like this. My hope is that someday the district will move even further and will feel comfortable having musical Rent produced in one of our theaters, but we're not quite there yet. Also, I'm going to mention, related to this, I want to thank Dr. Ertl because we are opening a gender-neutral bathroom at East High School and looking for one at West. And some students in the Gay Straight Alliance contacted me and were asking about something like that. And it took a little while to happen, but it might not affect many students, but they're really pleased that is happening. And I think communication of that to the whole student population will also play a role in increasing tolerance in our schools. One question I have is, last fall I went to an LGBT conference sponsored by DPI, and I listened to a presentation, I think it was Dorothy Espelage, who was an expert in bullying programs. She's a PhD that does research in that area. So some of the lessons you have seem like they address bullying as far as gender-related issues. And I bring that up now because she works in some schools. She's from Illinois and works in some schools in Wisconsin looking at bullying curriculum. And she made the comment that the DPI curriculum that we use is not as strong as it could be in the gender-related issues related to bullying. And she thinks that's a key source of a lot of bullying. So some of the lessons seem like they actually do apply to that. I'm just wondering, is the bullying curriculum going to tie into this as well?
Well, I've talked to Therese about being able to work with student services because they do have the bullying curriculum, and this is like a slice of that curriculum. Mm-hmm. And she had agreed that we'd be able, as we look at that training and that we would work collaboratively on that part of it, because it extends beyond just it does have to do with LGBTQ, but it also has to do with other other students as well. So we had a conversation about that as we were working on this curriculum, so that we could agree that we could work together on that particular, so it's not like in isolation of, but inclusive of the bullying curriculum. So we're not doing this like over here and then we have a bullying curriculum. But we still have to put that picture together. Okay.
And I just want to add that the bullying curriculum that we use, we do use the DPI's bullying curriculum in grades 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 are the grades that we deliver the DPI bullying curriculum. But we also have multiple other avenues where we are doing some bullying instruction in all of our schools. PBIS, the foundations of it, are building a healthy school culture. We use Second Step in all of our elementary schools and now in our middle schools. which has a component about how to, pro-social behavior. So while we do use the DPI bowling curriculum, and I agree that there are some limitations to it, it's not the only bowling instruction that does occur in our school. So.
Good.
And we actually have to thank Therese because during this process, there were different versions of the Second Step program at the elementary schools, and it was making this alignment very difficult. So she purchased an updated like the third edition of Second Step, and the feedback from those that were from Student Services on this committee were very positive about the new version of Second Step. And then she also purchased the Second Step for 6th grade adolescent studies teachers, so they would also have some consistency in being able to deliver some of those topics. So she was very gracious to do that.
No, I think this is going to be a great program. I think the kids are going to know more about themselves in general. Because of that, they're going to be more comfortable in school. And if they're more comfortable in school, they'll want to be there and they'll learn more. So I think that's really good. Thank you.
Yes, Mrs. Brandel.
Just thank you very much to Megan and Andrea and the other people on the committee. There was a lot of time put in, and I know you were, coming from a practice or to a practice or, from your classrooms or whatever. So it's always good to actually be present to see the work that our teachers are doing and the work outside of the classroom that they're doing as well. So thank you for your commitment to that.
Mrs. Weber, please.
I wonder if sometime we could have a presentation exactly on what is being, how bullying is taught. What I know Longfellow has shared a few things with me, but there's been a good deal of publicity on bullying, and I think it would be good if we could see what exactly Wauwatosa is doing. So if we could have that at a board meeting, I'd like to have you at least look at that.
It is noted. Thank you, Mrs. Weber. Is there any other board comment or question? All right, I wish to say I stand with Mr. Croner and in complete agreement with all of his comments on this topic.
And I just have a final comment that, what Mrs. Randall had said about Andrea and Megan. These two individuals are very committed and very passionate about having a meaningful curriculum for our students and worked well beyond. I know one of them got kicked out of Fisher Building one night. Charlie couldn't wait any longer. So I just have to say that both of them put in endless hours outside of their school day, uncompensated because of their care and concern for having a quality program for our students. So I can't say enough about how hard they worked on this.
And thank you for Melissa Lewis for getting all this website up to.
Oh, yeah, good for.
You seem to do this so easily, but I'm sure it takes a lot of courage to. It's a very difficult topic, and who knows what so many communities people try to help the kids, and there's a lot of difficulty, and that doesn't happen in this community. So, you have done a lot of good for us, so thank you. All right, with that, is there any community comment? We'll move to our last agenda item, Human Resources, the HR Committee update with Mr. Chanin, Director of Human Resources.
Dan, I'm assuming you have a PowerPoint, right?
We're losing our lines.
Thank you.
But I'm turning it back.
It's a rule.
I did it by instinct.
Yeah.
I think it's beautiful in here. I was afraid to wear a sweater. It's perfect. It's all
It needs to be a balance.
That's okay. Should we wait for Dr.?
I think so. I think we can wait.
Okay.
That's good because I turned off the computer.
We'll wait for your computer to shut down. So, Mrs. Ehrenberger, while we're at a little bit of a pause here, this the bullying report, or the bullying anti-bullying program report, do you have any off-the-cuff thoughts on what you'd like to do?
Bullying is part of the student services curriculum.
Okay.
So, Teresa, I'm sure.
See, I just
will,
keep
that's okay.
goofing it up tonight. Here we go. Okay.
Quite all right.
Doesn't
but-
need to talk about it.
I'm honored to have that opportunity, Mr. Meyer, to talk to you about bullying in our
Okay.
schools and what we do proactively to prevent it and how we respond to that. So that would be something that
I just thought the question came during the curriculum presentation.
Because there's a little piece of it.
Oh, well.
You're partly.
it's good that you get us mixed up because we do work together and try to send that message that it's a combined effort here. So it's good that you mixed it up.
Pretty good guess on the time.
I'm living evidence you do not have to be a
What's
polished
that, 30
speaker
minutes,
to
that's
participate in this room.
The baseball stuff was a little under.
Do we know how long Dr. Earl's going to be gone?
Not long.
Well, is this baseball thing? That's not a West thing?
I'm sorry?
The baseball thing is not a West thing.
It's community.
All right, like one side of town.
Mr. Chanin,
Yes.
take it away, please.
Hopefully you've had an opportunity to read the memo that we put together in preparation for tonight's meeting. And I guess I just want to start by saying the purpose of that memo is to provide some context and background for the administrative recommendation, and doesn't necessarily reflect everything that was read or contemplated by either the administration or members of the HR committee, but was trying to put some parameters on explaining, how we got to the recommendation that we got to, and hopefully that was helpful in providing you with background for today. The goal of the Human Resources Committee on this particular issue was to really seek input in a discussion format about different policy choices that we could be making as a district or could be recommending as an administration about the future of teacher compensation. And the method in which we did that in terms of the Human Resource Committee was a series of public meetings in which we kind of discussed different potential policy choices and their possible I am sorry, it is late. Implications. In a fairly open discussion, and I would note that those were open meetings, and the public was welcome, and most of those that were attended by members of the press. There's a broader background to those discussions that really started with the compensation committee that involved district staff last year, and it met twice last year to begin looking at those issues. And this is all to say that it really has been a process of discussion of what is possible. Some of the real core background of where we're headed starts with thinking about where we are. Like almost every district, not every district, but almost every district in the United States, we have a single salary structure. There's a wide gap between the top and the bottom of that pay scale. In ours, that's about 100%. I mean, the difference between a starting of 36.5 and an ending of 30 or 72,000. The drivers on that pay scale are purely years of service, although steps don't necessarily equate to years of service, and education. And there's a lot of good reasons why that was in place in terms of equity and non-discrimination and collective bargaining and assumptions about funding. But the reality is all of those assumptions are gone, and we, as many other districts in the area, need to start thinking about how do we want to align our pay system to our values. And we talked about potential ways to get there and also potential choices that could be made in the committee. And I think committee members can correct me if I don't express the consensus, but I think I express at least what the administration took away from our conversations. We did talk about the possibility that we could radically reform the way in which teachers are compensated by making differences based on teaching assignment. do we move forward with recommendations that suggest we do incentive pays or bonuses versus annual increases in raises? Do we try to move this forward quickly by making choices such as not grandfathering employees where they're currently at, but redistributing the dollars we have available to different teachers based on different priorities? The committee had fairly broad discussions about those, and I think the consensus was expressed in the memorandum, but the administration really walked away with a sense of what its recommendations would be, one of which is we really want to move forward in a manner that's not harmful to our current employees. That may mean a slower pace, but that really means looking to grandfather employees where we're currently at. And that, of course, will mean slower growth based on funding available, but we don't think we're going to do a service to our district by trying to radically redistribute existing salaries. When looking at the possibility of incentives versus bonuses, I think that philosophically this administration is of the mind that we really want to be providing increases, not bonuses. Bonuses are not, there's no necessary proven effectiveness to bonuses. And we're really looking to give people a sense of security and longevity in their employment with the Wauwatosa School District. So as we look at future compensation models, we're really looking at ones that would provide for increases for people over time. And then the discussion was fairly broad about the concept of differentiating based on assignments. And this is a road that I don't think we're ready to go down. It is value-laden in terms of deciding what education is. And differentiating at this moment among our teaching staff has very little payout in terms of what we're able to distribute to redirect resources, but may have a long-term consequence in terms of the quality of teacher we get in a particular area, because really what you'd be doing is assigning kind of winner and loser areas based on a current value of education rather than a holistic value of recognizing that there's more than one priority in educating children. And sometimes those are our values, the values of the board. Sometimes they're values that parents and community members and students bring to our district. And so that's a choice that probably at this time is best not made. We also had a broad discussion about the impact of teacher evaluation changes. And the question really was, can we start tying pay increases to performance? We have a new state evaluation system coming in, and there's a lot of good resources online for that, and I won't repeat that whole discussion. But there are a lot of unanswered questions about that. We are in the preliminary first-year stage of a statewide pilot system. We are piloting part of the evaluation system for teachers in our district, but it's not even the complete full evaluation package. It's really just the evaluation of the teacher impact, teacher behavior measures, and not the 50% that's going to be weighted by the state on measurable student outcomes and student results. So we really don't have, and I don't think the state does, have a full vision of how that evaluation system is going to play out. And we're 2 years away from implementing that. And so I think at this early stage to say, let's start designing a pay system that is tied to an evaluation system that we neither control nor have an opportunity to fully review is premature. And lastly, and probably I think Mr. Mack would say most importantly, there is a financial reality in terms of knowing what funding is available for the foreseeable future. At this point, we don't necessarily have a state budget in place that has predictive future increases for the district. I think there's a substantial worry on the part of the administration that to put out a pay plan that promises for a certain behavior that there will be a certain increase when there's not the ability to fully fund that promise is not really beneficial to our teachers or our staff. This is not to say that we don't believe that there should be increases within the means available, but I think we're really looking at how we get in a better position over the next several years to be able to implement a kind of pay scale that we might want. And I think that is through our annual increases, and I think it's through pursuing a strategy of compressing the salary schedule. Our raises this year were designed to put more money towards the bottom and the middle than the top. I think that's a strategy that, while we will have to bargain collectively on base wages each year, and we'll have to look at what funds are available from the state, that is a strategy that we really do want to continue. I think when we look at teaching as a profession and we look 10 to 15 years down the road, which I think we're obligated to do, I think a smaller spread in salaries between the top and bottom of the teaching profession and a higher starting wage are two ways that are going to make sure that teaching is still an attractive profession, make sure that teachers are compensated in a manner that is consistent with their status as professionals. And it's right now a pay scale that is set up to assume a 4% increase every year for 13 years, and that's just not where our funding is at. So that current spread of a very low starting wage and a ending wage that's twice as high isn't sustainable. So what you'll be seeing is annual recommendations in line with this as we evaluate our new evaluation system from the state. I think down the road, if there's funding for pay for performance models and we can reach out and meet those requirements and bring dollars into the benefit of our teachers, I think that's something we'd be interested in doing. In terms of, once the salary schedule is compressed, I think that we can use evaluations to differentiate pay. But right now, our current pay scale, top to bottom spread, really is a dominating factor in terms of equity within our district, in terms of within internal comparable that needs to be addressed and narrowed over the coming years.
I have a question. You make reference to the salary model that we want or might want. You said might want. I'm assuming you're being careful with your words, implying that we haven't decided yet what we want. Is that a correct interpretation? Or you haven't decided on a want that you are willing to recommend?
I think that there's an overall goal in the short term to compress the salary schedule, and that's necessary. I think that next want is dependent on funding and a clearer picture of where we're going to be in a year or two. There are I certainly have strong ideas, but I think that they're going to be some time in development.
And from the committee perspective, which may not be the same as your belief, I'm not asking you to, comment either way, whether you agree with the committee. But from the committee perspective, what's the next want? Is there a next want from the committee perspective?
Well, I'm going to speak for the committee, but we'll see. I suppose they will all chime in as well. I think that really what we're presenting here is a strategy over the short to midterm.
Okay.
And with a recommendation that we do want to see how evaluation can play into a possible pay structure, but it's very hard to evaluate a pay system that's only in its pilot stage. So it's something that has to be monitored. System. What am I saying?
You said pay system, you meant evaluation.
I did mean evaluation system, yeah.
May I comment?
So,
the financial piece is significant and drives it, but the fact that there is no research to support improved student achievement. And I walked into this committee, and I've been saying this probably as long as I'm on the board, that I always believe that if you could get, teachers, union leaders, administrators, board members to a table, that you could come up with a way to compensate. Well, when you start doing the research, there is nothing to support it. And not only can you not support improved achievement, but there are many reports that talk about the negative effects, increased testing, the cost, all of those things. And when you take this, and use our mission as your vision for where you want to, how you want to move forward, you really need to pay attention to the fact that everywhere you look, people have tried different things, and it's just not the best thing for kids right now. And that, obviously we want to compensate our teachers fairly. We want to encourage excellence in our teachers, but the bottom line is we want to make sure that we are doing what we need to do to educate our kids the best way that we can. And so the goal, I think, shouldn't be whether or not we can pay our teachers bonuses, but how do we get them to address? And I think, and Dr. Earl has said this many times, you can't, a teacher is a teacher, and they're in that profession for whatever reasons they're in it. And the idea that you would give a teacher $10,000 and they would start doing something very different and much better and more improved is just kind of, it doesn't make sense. It really doesn't make sense. On the other hand, the evaluation, may give us something, but again, when it's so much of it's tied to test scores, and those are probably one of the least reliable ways of measuring a teacher's effectiveness. You don't know how many other people have influence on that child's learning or scores, whether it be the teacher from the year before or their home or whatever it is. So we're a ways away from that. On the other hand, I don't think we're giving up as a committee. We're going to keep looking. We've had some other, suggestions regarding things like staff development, like we saw here tonight with some staff members who have put unbelievable amounts of time and effort and energy into certain initiatives. But again, as Mr. Chanin said too, we have to pay for that. So anyway, I just wanted to make sure that I conveyed, the reality of whether or not this is good, or whether or not it will help us to reach our goals and fulfill our mission.
Committee members have any other?
I would defer to the committee chair.
Thanks, Sam. After we had all these meetings, you try to figure out what's, our district, after we got the evaluations back from the state, we're in pretty good shape as far as the evaluation of our schools. You don't want to try and do something that's going to muck that up. So at this point, if it was a mess, and then, the hell, do something. But it's not a mess. So I think you have to be careful. It's difficult to decide. Everybody plays into the education of a student. Social workers, everybody. There's a lot of people, and you just can't put it all on a test score for a teacher sitting in a math class or a science class or whatever. So I come from a very competitive marketplace where it's easy to give bonuses. You work hard, you make a lot of money, you get a bonus. This school business is not that way. So I defer to Phil, Dr. Ertl, and the other people that are involved with this for guidance. And I think the prudent thing now is to move carefully, because what we have is a pretty good thing. I don't think you want to do something that's going to muck that up. So in time, I think something will happen. I think my personal opinion is going to happen through the evaluation of teachers and attrition. You're going to end up moving people out because as you condense the pay scales, you're not going to be able to afford to keep a lot of people. You're going to have to get the hot candidates. It's going to be, you have to evaluate them and move them out if they can't cut the mustard. But that's a different approach than telling somebody I'm going to pay you more money for doing something better, because I think they're all trying as hard as they can to do as good as they can do. And money doesn't drive them, which makes it even more difficult. It's easy. Money's easy. This altruistic business, group hug, it's not that easy.
Yeah, you're right.
It's just not that easy. You got to be careful, I think. So I think that's, after we discussed all this, I think we ended up saying, let's be patient.
Mrs. Mufeld?
The idea of compressing the salary schedule, the continued strategy of compressing the salaried schedule, what time period would we then be at our optimal strategy point? Is this in 3 years? Is there any prediction on that?
I hesitate to run a guess. I mean, if you're doing it at current financing where you could afford 1% to 2% a year, it's not going to get there in any reasonable time frame. We really need to see some changes in funding if we're going to hasten compression of the salary schedule. Because obviously the goal is we don't want our top wage to stagnate either.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to have some fairly significant increases at the bottom in several years and have to have the money to fund them. And so, without a revenue projection, that's hard to say. It really is. I think ultimately the ultimate strategic goal is a 20 to 30% spread, not a 100% spread. But really, without a funding stream, that's awfully hard to predict. We're going to have to make decisions annually.
Well, no, I understand that, but I see the work of the committee, and I see, well, you're talking about a future, and you're mapping out a future, and I understand that the variables change. However, we have plans for other things, and to me, employee relations is the biggest plan. If we don't have the people that we need with the students and we're paying them, then...
The answer is, we could certainly model out a couple of those with some assumptions. We could certainly model out what a compression would look like over 3 to 5 years with some predicted raises in there. We could do that. We could come back and provide that to the HR committee, absolutely.
Well, if they want it, that was my biggest question when I read the report and you put up that slide.
Right, which is, it's...
when can we be at the point we need to be then to evaluate some of these other systems if they're not ready yet?
I think Mrs. Mufeld has hit the core issue, and that I hear what Tom is saying, that things are working well. Let's not break it. And I'm hearing what the report says, that if the top earners, there's a morale issue here. And I'm hearing what Mrs. Randall says, that the research just doesn't show a positive educational outcome on the current pay for performance models, and therefore we take this compression philosophy. And I'm also of a mind that you don't need to make decisions before you need to make them. And there's a lot of moving parts right now in this educational endeavor in the state of Wisconsin, and we need to see what the current administration does. They haven't had time to fully implement their plan yet, and we've also seen that nothing is forever, no matter who is controlling things at a given point in time. That usually doesn't last, and so not to predict anything either way, but just to say, well, that's how life goes. Some periods you're up, some years your position is down. Now, all that said, back to what Mrs. Muehlfeld was going towards. At some point, this difference between the low earner and the high earner starts to be kind of like a birthright for the for the high earner, and a curse of birth for the low earner. You know, when were you born into this profession? And at some point, we aren't there yet, it sounds like, but at some point, that may have to be looked at with a different approach. That I suspect if you look at a 2% rate to closing this gap, it's going to be a lot of years.
That's correct.
And when there may be a year come in the future where we say, you know, this has been long enough, and, you know, some people are sitting at a lower salary and it's just not fair anymore. Some people are sitting at a higher salary and it's just not fair anymore. Now, it's not fair to spring any decision like that on people on a short-term notice, because people structure their life and plan things. I'm not saying we'll ever have to reach that decision point, because as we said, the philosophy of the state may change from time to time, or we may see some guidance come to fruition from the current philosophy. So, but yeah, this compression approach I predict, will have its limits. But that day is not here from what I'm hearing, and we don't know when that day will come. Is that pretty much what we're saying? Okay. Mr. Croner, please.
I have a couple comments, but I'm going to ask a question based on the immediate discussion. Because I had a question. I agree with the recommendation and how you reached it and why you reached it, but I wrote down that there's a risk in waiting to reward the top end of the pay scale. And the risk is that if other districts are increasing their top end, we're going to lose some of our best teachers, or at least some of our more expensive teachers, depending on which way you want to look at it. And so, what criteria are you going to use? Saying, okay, we need to change it so that we don't hurt the district more than we're helping it by losing top end teachers.
Absolutely. We want to look at the attrition rate. What our experience last year told us, and I would imagine for some years to come, is that we're not at risk of losing our top quartile or top half paid teachers. We're at risk at losing our teachers who are compensated below average within our own district. Those are the teachers who we're at risk losing. And part of that's because, like any school district, when we recruit staff, we want to be responsible. If we have someone early retiring and we're paying early retirement benefits, and we need to have some savings, and we're recruiting teachers at the lower end of our pay range, and whether that's 100% spread or a 30% spread. It is our lower compensated teachers who are most mobile. So it's definitely a consideration and one we'll watch, but the other reality is looking at what some of the other districts are doing in terms of pay. You are seeing things where it's $200 on the top step, and the raises are going other ways. What we're doing is not unique. I think we were a little in front of everyone because we're efficient and we wanted to get contracts out. But I think what you're seeing is similar things starting to happen in a majority of districts in the greater Milwaukee area in terms of small flat dollar amounts at the top, larger raises moving through the salary schedule. And so.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. DeRose, I'm coming on the same page with you. Would you identify an appropriate salary structure to award good teaching? Clearly, there are great teachers, though, and excellent teachers and great teachers, and they're that way because of natural talent and hard work, or both. And the trick is taking teachers that are above average and finding a way to give them the professional development to make them great teachers, or finding the right incentive to make them want to be great teachers. And that's I think the quandrum that we're in, that we can't quite know what that trick is. But I mean, you said earlier too that we clearly know, I think in some ways, what good teaching is, because if we're going to evaluate younger teachers and decide whether we're going to keep them or not, we have certain standards that we're going to look to. So I think we do need to look at that more closely so that we can develop the teachers as strongly as we can, and have them have incentives to want to stay here, and somehow be able to recognize who those teachers are and which ones are not going to be those teachers, and that's very tricky. My last is a general comment. I very much appreciated this memorandum. It laid out the problem. It provides background information. It provided the rationale for the decision that you made and clearly described the decision and why you made it. I wish all the major decisions that we made were accompanied by documents like this. I don't know why the board doesn't insist on it, but when people ask me, well, what other information would you want? This is the kind of information that I'm talking about, just so the board is aware. I think that this is really, really helpful in us understanding the work that was done, how the decision was reached, the thought process behind it, and why the recommendation is coming before us. So thank you very much for preparing this, and thank you to the committee for preparing this.
Mrs. Randall?
Could I just end on a more hopeful note, just with a couple paragraphs on some of the research? It talks about when Finland's, and I don't know if anybody's been reading about Finland, but for some time now they've been known as the top education in the world. When Finland's leaders sought to improve their student academic performance, they instituted measures that included reducing class size, boosting teacher salaries, and eliminating standardized testing. I mean, this is kind of out there, but teaching is now a highly sought-after profession in Finland, and Finnish students top the world in academic performance. If we want to make teaching a profession worth pursuing, we must pay all teachers a respectable professional wage on par with professions that require comparable education and expertise, and provide them with the tools they need to do their job. In their opinion, small classes, strong mentors, time for planning and collaboration, scope for their own creativity, and help with addressing challenges. So, the things that we were looking at, test scores or whatever people are using currently, aren't supported. But this gives, I think, kind of a hopeful outlook that as we continue our work looking for ways to do this, that maybe look a little wider, a little further.
Okay, well, thank you. Now, I think that we all need to root for the success of the initiatives at the state level, that they haven't had time to come to fruition yet. And it's my understanding that as a school district, we're participating where possible and appropriate with the state activities. Can you tell us a little bit about what we're doing to work with the state on those initiatives? Dr. Earl?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, we have Jefferson School professor. Stephanie Jaitner, the principal there, is working with some of her teachers to pilot the statewide evaluation model. So we're working through what that looks like, and they're part of the feedback process. Also, some of our principals are participating in the principal evaluation pilot with Dr. Ertl in terms of how we'll be evaluating principals on the statewide system. Some of the stuff that Ms. Jaitner has brought back, she's sharing out with colleagues and in meetings with staff, kind of previewing the direction that we're going. In a lot of ways, the state evaluation system, I don't anticipate will be a huge shift for our staff. Our most recent evaluation rewrite under collective bargaining really incorporated a lot of those elements. What I think we're going to see that's going to change is the level of consistency and rigor and training by bringing in a Danielson framework and training consistently across the state. That's going to give us a level of comfort in terms of transparency and fairness. And I think that when you start talking about tying something, anything, whether it's test scores or evaluation to compensation, that level of trust in terms of its transparency and consistency needs to be there. And one of the reasons it makes the step and lane movement so successful in terms of its the attitude of employees towards it is drastically fair. It is, predictable, fair, and not subject to subjective influences. And I think that if we have a rigorous evaluation model that's consistently applied, that gives some hope in terms of being able to use that as a factor, although I would say probably not the only factor in moving compensation forward, in a different manner.
Well, I think if we work to help make these state initiatives succeed, and I hear a lot of good ideas, a lot of good initiatives coming out of the state right now, that many of these open questions we have about how to proceed with our local model, those questions will be answered. And in a few years of a continuation of one philosophy, I think that's really what we need. That if we're waffling back and forth on philosophies, it's going to be hard at our level to make decisions. Is that I'm pretty much hearing, we can't commit to some things because we need these state programs to bear fruit, and then we can commit to some things. Okay. Is there any other board comment? Is there any community comment on this topic? Is there any public comment on non-agenda items? Then we'll move off the scheduled agenda. Seeing none. At did I forget something again? Okay. I did that a lot tonight. 10:06, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Thank you.
Second.
Mr. Giroux, second. Mrs. Galante, please call the roll.
Mrs. Fee?
Yes.
Mr. Giroux?
Yes.
Mr. Croner?
Yes.
Mrs. Muehlfeld?
Yes.
Mrs. Randall?
Yes.
Mrs. Weber?
Yes.
Mr. Meyer?
Yes. We stand adjourned at 10:06. 10:07.